I'd like to call the Select Board meeting for Monday, July 24th, 2023 to order. We'll be going into executive session and returning no earlier than 6 p.m. Jeff, can I have a motion?
You can, Madam Chair. I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, as the Chair has declared that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town. In addition to a general discussion of litigation matters, the following cases may be discussed, and they are going to be discussed as printed in the agenda. And B, pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Town Administrator.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. 5-0.
Is there, can I just ask a question? Is there any reason for something like this? I understand why we were doing it on labor, that we can't just sit right here and be more comfortable.
Other than the room's all set up for tonight, we could do it going forward.
Going forward, if the chair would discuss with the town administrator, for a lot of this stuff, it makes no sense that we go back downstairs.
Troop down,
to me.
back and forth.
For 6 years or so, many before me, we stayed in this room.
And
There's
just,
only one issue that I think arose that caused us to start going downstairs, so I'd like to consider staying up here.
too late to do it for tonight?
If you don't mind.
Yep,
Only
okay.
because the room is
Yep.
prepped.
I'm going to call the Select Board meeting for July 24th back to public session. We were in executive discussion, and we did not discuss B. We just made it through A and even held you waiting for 3 minutes, which I don't like to do. So B will come back at another time. And no decisions were made. If everyone would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to start with public comments, but I'm going to remind people that I have had requests that people get up close to the microphone. I get a call a week that they can't hear people. And Julie, you need to pull your microphone in. And Michael, when you lean back, you have to take your microphone. That's the story. Okay, Cindy. the
Good
floor is
evening, Madam
yours.
Chair. Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber. Well, as everyone knows, Wednesday night in Harwichport is Port Summer Nights. This Wednesday, we have an extra special event happening. One of our global sponsors, the Davenport companies, of our Wednesday nights, and the Chamber is bringing a special attraction and opportunity you don't want to miss. Your chance to drive to win at the Seaside Le Mans, the race for the Cape Cod community. This is the first chance in its 22-year history. People will be able to win a $2,000 seat in the legendary charitable race for just $50. There are only 300 tickets, and they're being sold partially on Wednesday night. They're also going to have one of the Formula One style karts there, and the winner will be drawn on September 9th. So come this Wednesday, Port Summer Nights, and buy hopefully your drive to win. Also on Wednesday, Wednesday seems to be a really busy day this week. Up in Harwich Center is Firefly Boutique, and she is having a summer trunk show from 1 to 6, and they are a wonderful addition to Harwich Center if you haven't been yet. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Anyone else? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
not expecting there not to be a line. I had a quick update.
sure.
This afternoon, representatives from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection held a Teams call with town managers and administrators from the South Coast, Cape Cod, and South Shore. I think they've already released information, but just wanted to make the general public aware that they have made a tentative determination to deny the application made by Holtec regarding the discharge of the waste that is at the former Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station. And so the reason why it's tentative is their process requires them to open a period for public comment. So that period for public comment will go through August 28th, 2023. So again, we know that they've made some announcements today, but just wanted to bring that out because I know there's keen interest on that topic here on Cape Cod.
Thank you, Joe. Last call. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, we're going to move into the public hearing. Jeff, can we have a motion or read the hearing?
Sure,
notice?
Madam Chair. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the general laws as amended. That application has been made to this board for an alteration of premises for the annual general on-premises wines and malt liquor license now held by Cape Roots Market LLC, DBA Cape Roots Market and Cafe. Gabrielle Leidner, manager, 557 Route 28, Harwich Port. Applicant is seeking to alter premises to include additional indoor and outdoor seating. Site plans can be found at the Select Board's office at the Harwich Town Hall. The Select Board will hold a hearing on this application Monday, July 24th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the Don B. Griffin Room at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, at which time all interested parties will be heard. Remote access is also available. Please see posted agenda for dial-in information. Select Board.
Thank you. Is anyone here from Cape Roots that wishes to speak? Or online? Oh, there you are. You'd just pull the microphone towards you, please. Thank you.
Hello. We were just wondering if, I know you guys got our pack and everything, we're just wondering if you had any questions for us or concerns.
So Madam Chair, for the record, you want to
Yes.
have these folks introduce themselves, but, so Gabe, just for the record, if you could tell us who you are.
Gabe Leidner, Brooke Leidner from Cape Roots Market.
Great, thank you. My understanding is we do the hearing after the public comment, so this is just your opportunity to present anything that wasn't in the packet, or if there's anything in there that you feel you'd like to clarify. Because we're going to then hear from the public, and
Okay.
then we'll deliberate.
All right. No, we don't have anything to say.
Okay, well, you had a nice walk.
Yeah. Should we go back?
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public
You have to
wish
open
to
up the
comment?
public hearing.
Mr. Waystack?
Madam Chair,
Good
Yes.
evening, Madam Chair, members of the board.
specifically open the public hearing for them to make the
Oh,
comments.
Jeff
and
read it.
I,
He made the, yeah.
I move that we open the public hearing.
okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Don? And I'm an aye. Now, Mr. Waystack.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Bernadette and I are here representing Avalon Sunset Trust. We're the direct abutter to our friends and neighbors, Gabe and Brooke, and they've done a great job with that building. And in their application, I want to clear up any misconceptions. They're looking to increase some seating. They're not becoming a bar. They close down at 8, and I think we've talked about the latest at night is 9 at maybe on the port nights. We share the parking woes that everyone shares downtown, and we've done a great job coexisting together. So they're great neighbors, they run a great business, and I would highly encourage you to approve their license tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Move that we close the public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay. Who would like to start?
I move that we approve the alteration of premises application submitted by Cape Roots Market LLC, DBA Cape Roots Market and Cafe, location 557 Route 28,
Second.
as presented.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0, Joe.
You have comments?
Did you want to?
I did want to comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did anyone want to discuss?
Of course you want to comment.
Make it quick, Don.
Back from
I've been-
vacation and she's yelling at us?
Yeah. We haven't been doing that while you were away. I just wanted to make sure that they understood. The public in general loves the place. I've been to it. It has the feel of a cafe in a metropolitan area. It just feels really nice. And I love what you've done to it, and I'm sure we all wish you well with it.
Thank you, Don, because we should have said that. Appreciate it. Next is the joint meeting with the Select Board and Bylaw Charter Review. Does the chair want to open your meeting? Do you want to come up to the microphone? So if you'd like to begin?
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I call the meeting of the Bylaw Charter Review Committee to be open, and we have a quorum.
Okay, great. Having not done this before, who starts? Do we have the committee start?
Whatever you decide.
Well, let's have the committee speak first, then.
All right. You did receive our letter dated June 13th.
We did?
I hope you did. Thank you. And we are having this conversation so that we can get clarity as to when the Bylaw Charter Review Committee could have access to some of the funds of the $75,000 that was passed at a special town meeting in October 2022, Article 3, for review of the bylaws and the charter. And we have discussed at our meeting a plan as to how we'd like to go forward. So that is why we are here.
Okay. Joe, did you want to,
Sure, the board should have in front of you the vote of town meeting referenced in their letter of June 13th. So this was Article 3 of the special town meeting held on October 18, 2022. You can note in the motion that was adopted, the article was restricted only to charter and general bylaw. Zoning bylaw was omitted from the motion in the act. So that's the action that you have in front of you.
right. Board members?
I'll start. I read the letter submitted, thank you, and I have reviewed the meeting, but I have a different take on this, and I know that there's two processes, and right now we would have to have an elected group if we want to get an independent set of eyes on the charter. And I do support hiring a consultant, but I do not support hiring a consultant for the current charter bylaw review. And I would like the consultant to look at it first and make recommendations. Maybe speak to the charter bylaw review, speak to the town administrator, speak to the board of selectmen. But I am not in favor of just handing over money for the charter bylaw review to hire a consultant and start the process. I think the town should do that, and we should get recommendations from a consultant.
Jeff?
I think for a few reasons, Madam Chair, I'd like to sit back and listen to the other board members'
Okay.
positions, opinions, and thoughts, please.
Okay. Julie?
I wouldn't disagree with Michael. I think, I have no problem with us moving forward in the process, but I agree. I think we need somebody to sort of look at it from a generic point of view, take in where they think we could be making some improvements, or even ask questions of what those intentions were and involve the administrator, et cetera. So I wouldn't be adverse to moving forward with the process, but I think it would be nice to start at a higher level, like with an overview.
Don?
Well, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I have to say that I don't know how, with all due respect, I don't know how you would be able to have somebody come in under contract and just review a charter generically. There has to be some context within why the town did what they did, how long it's been this way. Other people need to have input about whether it's working well in that particular area. But I don't see how it can be done without a partnership of some sort. It can't be done absent their participation.
Michael?
If I may, I didn't say absent. I would like the beginning of this to be somebody that does this professionally, which certainly knows how to look at a charter. Certainly, charter bylaw would be involved at some point, unless the Board of Selectmen decides it wants to go the route of having a fresh 5-member elected board work with that.
Go ahead.
Thank
Linda?
you. Just pointing out under our current charter that the committee, section 716(1), the committee shall regularly review the bylaws of the town and submit proposed revisions to the town meeting at least once every 5 years. In addition, the committee shall regularly review the charter and submit proposed amendments to it to the Board of Selectmen, which should be Select Board, under Section 2 of Chapter 10 of this charter, which was amended in 2017. So I would submit that if you're going to follow the charter, the existing charter, is there a way that we can work together? Because the charter clearly says that the Bylaw Charter Review Committee is supposed to be reviewing the charter and therefore making recommendations. We did have a concept that we talked about fulfilling the October 22 article. There would be a consultant to support the review and provide best practices information, including wording revisions as appropriate. Each committee member will be assigned sections of the charter for in-depth review. All will review past committee minutes to seek possible change information, review town bylaws to see if both documents are in accord. Hold at least 2 public hearings to gain input from the community. I don't think anybody wants to do this in the dark. We need community input. Specifically, we would want to request input from the Select Board, Town Administrator, and the Town Clerk, and the various boards, committees, and commissions. What do they think should be updated? What do they think should be changed? Present possible changes in a public presentation posted to the town website, articles for town meeting. I don't think anyone on our committee is saying that we, A, have all the answers, and you don't have all the answers either. We're not clear on a direction. I think we have to listen to what the town has to say, review minutes. I mean, I sat where you were for 6 years. I know that there have been places in the charter where we have needed to say, well, it looks like it sounds like this, and we've needed to pay for legal advice. We have several places in the charter that probably could be worded a little more clearly and specifically as to what was to happen. However, we do need to know where we'd like to go before we hire a consultant for this on-top review. I would suggest that we have at least, our committee can have a public hearing. We'd like to, we can have a joint public hearing with the Select Board, fine by us. And then, once we get some ideas from the public, from the committee, the various committees, from the board, et cetera, what should be looked at, then you hire a consultant to say, how should we approach this? How should we do that? Are there best practices? What have other communities done in this area? Because just to hire someone is like saying, I'd like to build a house. Contractor, just go build. And that's not going to be productive. I'm sorry, Michael, if you think that this current committee is not capable of doing that. That's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Michael?
I didn't say the committee, plural, wasn't capable of doing that.
You said you
I
didn't.
said I would like a fresh set of eyes on it.
Okay.
Now, there has been a long-standing charter review committee, with the exception of a 1 year when they took a year off. We have been discussing the charter globally for at least 5 years with a lot of the same complaints that you brought up, pointing in different directions, legal opinions. And I have been told by the chair of the past chair of the charter bylaw that it was written that way for a reason. So any document that was written to create more chaos needs an overview. And I would still strongly say that a consultant that does this for a living would be able to look at a charter and offer an opinion to both of us on how we go forward. I personally do not want to see it come from the current committee.
Okay.
And you know, this has been going on and on. Same with the positions, putting a separate article in the warrant on positions. It was said by past chair that we've traditionally done that, until we created a spreadsheet and showed that it didn't for the past 2 town administrators. We voted as a board not to do it, yet charter bylaw brought that forward to the board as a recommendation to do it at the last town meeting. So I do feel that there's a disconnect, and often read on social media before it's read in this room. I think we need a fresh set of eyes. But I'm not pointing my finger at the committee as a whole.
Okay, that's good, because I'm the current chair. So, and I don't want to get into any personal discussions. I would appreciate we not do that. I'd like to go forward. I do think that there is more experience in looking at charters on our group than there is in this group. Not saying that you're ignorant, I'm just saying that, I'm not saying that. If I was gonna say it, I would say it. But we're the ones, we do have the right, or we do have in the charter itself that we are supposed to be following. Remember the charter that says that we're the ones who are supposed to be doing this. Now, is there a way that we can see ourselves forward in working together on this? Because we don't want to get into a piddling contest. We want to do what is best and right for the town, and the town, the people who live here, the people who work here, the people who have businesses here, the employees. Those are the people we serve. We don't serve individual purposes. Personally, whatever happened in the past is not particularly relevant to me. I want to look at the charter, and I think we have the commitment from this board, our group, our committee, that just because it was done this way in the past doesn't mean that it's appropriate for now, or it will lead us into the future. And that's what we have to do, is we have to look at how do we want to govern ourselves going forward. I mean, yes, people did things for a certain way a number of years ago. Is that what we want to do now? And should we do something different? So I would really like to see how we can work together on this, as opposed to just doing the baby with the bathwater out the window.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate your comments about moving forward and keeping it not personal. I'm going to recognize Jeff, and go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here. And I think I'm ready now to say what I have a few thoughts on this, and as the liaison to the Charter Bylaw Review Committee, I've given a lot of thought to this. I don't have the total history of Charter Bylaw Review with the Select Board, and I'm not going to pretend to have that history. I'd like to begin by talking about, I think, what we all agree on, and that would be that a consultant would be in the best interest of the town of Harwich. I think that's a fair statement to make. Please correct me if I'm wrong, my colleagues up here and my colleagues on that side. I think we all agree that the charter needs to be looked at, and I think we have a consensus on that as well. As I see it, we have two groups, the Select Board and Charter Bylaw Review, and we've got maybe not in totality, but two different ideas of how this can happen. The goal of any team that's trying to work together is to come up to the table with their two ideas, but then find a common idea that we can move forward with. I really like what you're saying about how we can work on this together. That's what I would be in favor of. I would be in favor of a consultant for sure. I would be in favor in working with your committee and the Select Board to come up with framework that then the consultant can land and begin to review. But I agree with Michael saying that for either one of us to grab the consultant first would be, I believe, suboptimal and not in the best interest of our Select Board and your committee. So if there is consensus and a way to move forward where we work together, create the framework, move forward with a consultant, getting the consultant on board, I would wholeheartedly support that 100%.
Julie?
So just to follow up on that, I was going to start there myself to say, I think we agree that we need to look at it, we need to assess where we can, make it meld together like it's supposed to, or areas that we need to revise, and things have changed, and whatever way we can make it a better working document. I don't think either your committee or this board disagrees with that. I would like to see us move forward on an RFP to get a consultant on board. I think a lot of what you pointed out, and I like what you were saying about, the public hearings and the public input and the various committees and commissions that should be involved as well. But I think it's important to have that consultant at those meetings and listening to that
Yes.
feedback.
Yes.
So that person can hear the public feedback, hear your committee's concern maybe with some of that feedback, so they can be looking at it from that higher level that I was saying. I wasn't saying it as if they would do that on their own, but to work with the committee, to hear the input, and to then start to talk, have a joint meeting, as you said. Let's hear some of that info funnel, but not at the end. Like, let's have a few meetings as we move forward, so we all stay informed, we all understand, what your thoughts are, what our thoughts are, where we differ. Come back again to that center point and use that consultant to help us get there. Because I see it sort of as a staged process, right? It's been a work in progress for a long time, which is why we have some disconnects. That would be, I think, the best approach. Move forward with the RFP, get that person on board, involve them from the very beginning and in those joint meetings with us.
And I think
Jo-
that makes perfect sense with the proviso that the reports from the consultant go to both committees.
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
Joe, didn't you have some potential for a group that we already have that can do this?
You mean a vendor or a consultant?
Correct.
Yeah, for my experience, our code book, as our clerk can attest to, is the product, and the ongoing partnership is through general code. So they are the folks that, as we're presently doing with this past town meeting's potential amendments to general and zoning bylaws, when those get to the level of codification, they work with the clerk's office to update the code in the book. However, when a town first comes into contact with general code, which is where my experience comes in, they have the skills, the ability, and the staff to do any level of diving into prospective charters, prospective bylaws, including general and zoning. So as the originator of this article concept and dollar amount, and I want to put it out there again, the secret sauce that I used was 75,000 matches my signing authority. So as a chance to expedite the process, that's where the dollar amount comes from. I do not yet, as Chief Procurement Officer, value the service that I'm contemplating our current vendor do under separate agreement would come anywhere near that, and therefore would not necessarily require the RFP, because anything over 50 requires that. So, yes, I know there is a vendor. It's our current vendor, and we can contract with them to analyze the charter, analyze the general bylaws. Part of my comfort in this awkward conversation this evening is that these folks have brought this matter to your attention because, from my perspective, this is a policy decision that starts and ends with the board, that's influenced by a committee that the board appoints, and does have an advisory responsibility at some level to you folks. I've more than answered your question. I'm going to yield there. There's some thoughts I may have, but I'd rather have it go back to you folks.
When Joe explained that to me, that made sense to me. These are people that are already involved in our code, and if they could do that review and then make that presentation to a joint meeting of both of us for what Joe thinks is less than 75, and then we decide from there, do we need a consultant to do more? Do we need that elected body that does the larger review? Any thoughts or comments on that? Yes.
I'd just like to ask Sandy Hall if she would give a quick little dissertation on what an elected charter commission actually means, so that the public can understand. The word gets thrown around, an elected committee. Well, what does that mean? So Sandy, if you'd be so kind.
I would like to start just with the concept that was presented to us originally, which was, in fact, as we were given to understand it at the time, a consultant to help guide this committee through the whole process of revamping a charter. And going back to the original Charter Commission, we had a consultant that was what he did, Dr. David Booth. And he would bring in all kinds of information about various choices, various things you could do. He basically wrote most of the language back then, but he guided the committee through, and I don't know enough about E-code to make a comment one way or the other about that, but the consultant we got came through the MMA, and they have people who do that. Just, work with the committees. He would come down here twice a week from Amherst, and we would meet. Charter Commission is a 9-member elected commission. It has to be initiated by a petition of 15% of the town's voters registered at the last state election. So it's a very difficult process to get it started. My personal opinion at this point is that I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to have a 9-person elected independent commission to go through it's usually 12 or 18 months that you're given to do the work by state law. And, hire the consultant more, in the mode of a Dr. Booth or whatever MMA has. They have usually a number of people, and you get and pick the one you want as a charter commission. But that is the process. And then the charter commission has hearings, has meetings, meets with all the different boards and committees, finally puts together this document, which is given to the town to vote on.
Okay, thank you. That certainly gave me more clarity on what that is. Appreciate that.
I think that to make sure that we all understand, the Charter Commission is an independent body. It does not answer to the Select Board. It does not answer to the Bylaw Charter Review Committee. It is its own entity. So I think that needs to be made clear, that if we're going to go that route, that is what it means. So we would basically all lose control. So,
Anyone else?
appreciate it,
Joe?
Sandy, thank you.
Just to follow on what the member of the committee had just referenced. If a municipality is contemplating significant changes to charters, which would be considered potentially having an elected charter commission, if you reach out to the Mass Municipal Association, the first step that MMA does is put you in touch with the Mass Municipal Association's Form of Government, or FOG committee, of which I'm one of the 9 members.
There's an irony.
So if we reach out to MMA, good news, you'll be reaching out to me on that committee. So there is already a way to do some of that. MMA does not immediately recommend vendors anymore. What they do is they rely upon the Form of Government Committee and either the full membership or some members there to come to a community and advise on next steps.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to bring this down to street level here for a second. I mean, where everybody's talking about overview and policy, it's all great, but we're entering our 10th month since we approved this money, and we've been complaining about this like forever. I'd just like to urge us, it sounds like Julie's pathway is a reasonable one. We work together, we invite people in, we get input from people, which is kind of what I was saying about it can't be in a vacuum. You can't just look at it up in a book and say, hey, that looks great, and just throw it in there. It's kind of like the planning committee. Their consultant is supposed to take into account everybody's opinions on the outside and then digest it and put out a document that codifies that. Again, I'm just frustrated because we're sitting here talking about this. We're complaining that nothing's happening, even as nothing's happening. This was voted on October of last year, and we still haven't done anything at all to hire anybody.
Anyone else? Michael?
Just to Don's point, we have projects on our procurement list from 2013. So
Well, that
10
doesn't make
months
me
doesn't
proud.
seem very long. The, Joe's path made a lot of sense, and with our current vendor to take a look at what we have and make a suggestion to both groups, and then make a suggestion from there. But it would seem to me that a current vendor for a little amount of money can look at what they're already doing and make a recommendation on where they think the path that we should go. Don,
Makes
Ju-
sense to me.
yeah, Julie's way also sounds great, but that sounds like an awful lot of meetings without a starting place, because clearly, and I won't point to the new charter bylaw, clearly the past charter bylaw and the Board of Selectmen don't agree on almost everything. So I would like to start with an independent person to look at it, what they're doing, and make a recommendation to both groups in another joint meeting, and have a starting point.
Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, what would be the time frame for the path that you're suggesting? Or that you've brought up, I should say?
So there's several key considerations that impact upon a procurement, and that's where I see it at this point. Aside from this policy discussion, and getting to the earlier comment, the only reason why I, as administrator, did not move forward on this procurement is because of the amendment that occurred at town meeting last year, which nullified a key component of that by amendment. That was to remove the zoning bylaw aspect of it for evaluation, and I think that changed the tone and tenor of what was to happen. There's nothing that prevents me, as the town administrator, with a span of control over this dollar amount, other than intervention by the select board, to move forward on this. So it can happen immediately. The reason why it hasn't is because of this policy discussion between these two bodies.
Shall we, go ahead, Linda?
I think that this group would be happy to work together as long as the information flow is there to this committee, and that we are all sharing in the same piece of information. Michael, I'll see if I can keep up the history and disagree with you about everything.
We've always done it. Almost done it.
But I'll keep it going. I'll keep it going.
And I will promise you the information will go to both parties. There's no value in keeping it a secret. And I agree with your comments that once we get whatever that is and we've digested it, there should be public review, comment, forum, whatever we want to call it.
I think we should have a parallel path as we go forward, which is, I think that it would be incumbent on us, even though we're talking about this on-top review of this professional person, if they don't have some basis for what they should be looking at, we want to have, just make something up. We want the select board to be 7 people instead of 5, or 2 instead of 5, whatever. That if they don't have some basis for looking at stuff, it's going to be a very big, helicopter ride at 90,000 feet, which is not going to get us anywhere. I would suggest that if we're going to go out and see if we can find someone, that at the same time, we put into motion having a public hearing or public meeting to get people in the community and their opinion, so we can at least give someone a baseline for what they might be looking at. There might be parts of the charter that are just perfect the way they are, and probably a good chunk of it is. I think we're going to find that there's really very defined pieces that need some attention.
And I think we all have a spot here or there that we think needs tweaking.
And I think that if we don't get that on a piece of paper to then hand to someone who will be the consultant reviewing, they're going to be starting way up here and just throwing things out and see if anything sticks on the wall.
Joe, is there any reason that we couldn't provide a joint list of, we want them to look at the whole thing, minus zoning, but these particular sections?
So not only is there no objection, I took that that's what's happening here. However, to board member comments and questions, I want to be clear. The original genesis of this article was to fund an evaluation by the vendor of the current documents that they maintain for us, to use their subject matter experts within their operation to find disconnects that are obvious to this reader in the charter and general bylaw level, and perhaps do the same on zoning. So that was the genesis of this article and this effort. I won't do that if there's different direction through the board from the advice and direction and discussion that you have with bylaw charter review. In other words, this was never intended to be a charter consultant. This was meant to be a cursory review of disconnects where there were so many different edits over time. It would be, in my opinion, a natural review where one has not occurred for several years. So if there's expectations, that's where I was at. So to your question, Madam Chair, no, there's nothing that prevents it. These are funds that were authorized by town meeting for use by the town through the direction of the select board.
Okay, just to clarify, so it would be appropriate for us to make a joint list of, we want them to review everything minus zoning, but these are 10 particular, I don't know what they are, clauses or articles, or these are 10 particular things we'd like them to look at.
So I could rely upon that as part of the scope of services.
Okay.
And seeking their input. However, with our procurement, I would also put in including but not limited to those
Right,
sections.
right.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? Jeff?
So the time frame, I would love to get
So-
an understanding of if we, is this something we can vote on here now to move forward and direct Joe to begin the process? And then if so, Joe, what is the time frame to secure said person?
Well, first, if there was no vote directing me to do something specific, I would start tomorrow.
Okay,
If there is a vote this evening to direct me to do something specific, I will start tomorrow. Meaning I am the project lead to start on this project. I will partner with others in government that I do not have a span of control over, who might have a direct connection to that vendor. Generally speaking, if we're looking at this as a Chapter 30B, there I go again with those particulars, but if we're looking at less than 50,000 to start, which is what I envision, I can solicit 3 quotes of any codification company. However, I can modify it by saying they must have direct knowledge of the town of Harwich. So, because there's a tremendous value in that. And then it really comes down to, this can be their busy time of year for the New England reps, because everybody's just gone through their town meeting, everybody's going through codification or recodification. So I would have to, in the response from them, get that timetable.
thank you.
However, there's nothing in that timetable that should prevent us, the royal us, all of us, in contemplating potentially some articles, if all parties agree to clean up, at the next annual town meeting. So there are milestones we can throw in as well.
Right, and if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
the time, the delta between now and when that person lands is a great opportunity for the two groups to work together, and we gain some outside input from the public as well. So I see this being something that I would support right here, right now.
Okay. Belinda?
Just a clarification on that article from October. The purpose of this article is to appropriate funds to be used to support a comprehensive review of the current code, which is comprised of the Harwich Charter, general bylaws, zoning bylaws was removed by motion. I don't see any reference to Board of Selectmen in there or Select Board, but that's just a comment. Sandy?
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes, Joe?
if one were to read the entire article as it was printed in the warrant, it ends with, "and to act fully thereon by request of the Board of Selectmen."
Yep. We can parse that, and I know you like to do that, but let's just leave it at that. Sandy?
Well,
or
Madam
Anita?
Chair, if I could,
Joe?
to the Board Chair.
Yes.
That felt a little personal right there about the parsing, but I guess what I would say is, this board and I as administrator have done procurement for the town. And if we rely upon committees without employees, It's for advice and guidance.
Correct.
That's where I think this is coming to tonight, but I stand by everything I said in response to the board member's question about how this could start.
And all procurement is basically you implementing based on the board's.
Correct,
Correction.
as a chief procurement officer.
Okay, let's go back to the, let's not make this personal.
But I was
Lynn?
just saying that I didn't want to parse what it said, but that's what the
Okay,
article is. I think Sandy?
Yes, Sandy.
Our current chairman was not with us at the meeting when this idea was first brought to us. And just let me preface it by saying, it seems to be going in a good direction, so, okay. However, the genesis as outlined by our town administrator now doesn't sound at all like what he said to us at the time that he was looking for our support for the article. And we can go back to a tape, but it was not quite that. It was presented to us as to be supporting our committee to do a top-to-bottom review of the charter. Working together is obviously always optimal, so, but I just want that on the record.
Okay, and I'd like on the record that we're trying to go forward here and not go into history. Anyone else?
So we can
So-
count on this starting tomorrow.
What's that? Yes, do you need anything from us, Joe? Do you need a motion, or do you just need consensus that we want to go with that code, whatever you call it, group?
So I would ask you not to do consensus on particular vendor. There's nothing that prevents me.
Right, right.
If everybody understands the next steps that I'll be taking. So again, in the normal course of events, we wouldn't have this level of discussion on a standard procurement. So I believe I have ample information, and I've answered board member questions specifically. I think you know the direction I'll take.
Okay,
There's no need for the contract awarding board, if it gets to that level, to weigh in tonight.
okay, thank you.
One last comment, Mary.
Yes,
Will it be all right with the select board and with you, Madam Chair, if we put together and work with you for that first public hearing to hear what the community might have to say? In anticipation of this, I think now it's the summer, it's August, it's
Right.
August almost, but do it sometime in the mid-September and see if we can start getting some of this information together, because I think the town administrator is probably right. They're all really busy trying to do all their work that came from various town meetings,
Right.
which most of them on the Cape are held in May, April, May. So they may not even be available till September or October. So would that be all right?
that's fine by me. Any members disagree? Nope, that's fine. Jeff?
Well, as the liaison, I'm
Yeah,
here for
I'll
your
work
phone
with you.
calls and your
Yeah.
emails, and I'm ready for it.
Good.
Thank you.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
You have to vote to recess.
What's that?
Adjourn the meeting.
Don, did you say something?
Yeah, they had to vote
They
to
had to vote
adjourn.
to
Oh, okay.
Linda, don't go far. You're up next.
I would never go far.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Oh, yes, now we have a joint meeting with the Select Board and the Traffic Safety Committee. I don't see a whole lot of enthusiasm for this.
Long time coming. Welcome back.
I know, I should just sit here for the rest of the evening. Resume enhancers. Okay, call to order this meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee.
Okay.
Ma'am.
Yes, you have the floor. I know you have two proposals, one on Cross Street, and then at least a discussion on 39 and Chatham Road.
Yes. On Cross Street, and thank you, Jeff, for coming to our meeting.
Welcome.
Some of the history of this is that Cross Street is a narrow street, as are most streets on the Cape. And we have parked cars on both sides. Cross Street is, the section we're talking about is a section from 28 to Pleasant Street. It's a short section. Cross Street continues on. but like many of the streets that surround Harwich Port, they're narrow, and when we have all the activity that we do in Harwich Port, as it has become an extremely vibrant community and business area, entertainment, food venues, you name it, we end up with some parking issues. And we have people who are parking all day, beach parkers. That gets everybody excited. And in early 2023, the neighbors were put together a petition that they delivered to the Traffic Safety Committee with what they would like to see happen, their suggestions. I think some of the neighbors are here tonight. Yes, they are. And on July 5th, we had a general discussion of Traffic Safety Committee duly posted and the neighbors who were present, and to talk about what they thought and how could we come to some level of consensus of something that we could bring to the Select Board for changes to the Cross Street area. I think you have the memo that came out of that meeting dated July 11th with my not-to-scale little picture. I am an accountant. I am not an engineer.
It was well done, Linda.
Well, it just seemed to me as I was preparing for the meeting on July 5th, that when people start talking about, well, it's the north side of the street, it's the east side of the street, it's the west side, I'm not sure we want to make sure we all know exactly what corner we're talking about. So that's why they're labeled, and so we have our agreements. And this proposal is what we came to at that meeting. We did talk about whether or not something like no beach parking was going to be feasible as opposed to no parking signs. And no beach parking requires that the police would have to be there watching, John and Susie unload their car with their pails and their 2 kids and the blankets and say, oh, you're going to be beach parking. They don't know that because the car is just sitting there. I don't think we can expect the police to be on any of our streets, Cross Street, monitoring the traffic 24/7. They have a lot of other streets that they might have to pay attention to. So I think we said the no beach parking signs probably wasn't going to work, and we went with just straight no parking on one side of the road. You have our suggestion. This was voted on by our committee, and seemed to have consensus with the neighbors. And so that is what we are presenting this evening.
I understand there is a police officer on your committee, is that
Aaron
correct?
Mosterian, yes,
Okay.
he is not here this evening. We let him take vacation.
There you go.
But he was present at that meeting.
Right.
And I would like to say, Madam Chair, that having DPW represented on the Traffic Safety Committee
Right.
and a police representative, a traffic person on this committee, has been invaluable. Because things will come up and, why can't we do this? And either Aram or Lincoln will say, well, according to Mass General Law, according to this, according to that, you can't do that. You can't just pick a sign up and move it. You have to go through the traffic code and all that, the stuff that is there that you can and cannot do. Both those representatives have been very valuable to us.
Thank you. Chief Gilmet, did you want to comment on this at all?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Chief Gilmet, Harwich PD. I'm in full support of what the committee has come up with here. I know that my deputy has been in touch with them, as well as Aram is on the group and participated completely in the process, so full support.
Thank you. Any board members have questions, comments? Do we want to take a motion?
Maybe public comment?
Oh, sorry, public comment? Yes, please just identify yourself and get close to the microphone so people can hear. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Alexandros Christakis. I grew up on 10 Cross Street, and my family owns George's Pizza House. So, bit of a conflicted existence, I think. I grew up in Harwich. It's always been a quaint, wonderful town in the winter. The summertime, however, is tough. Parking is just not easy. and we have a symbiotic relationship with tourism, and there's just no parking. There needs to be more. I don't know what we can do about this, but I feel like this might be a step backwards. I know it's a narrow street, and I know that you own a home, you don't want, 40 tourists on your lawn every day. However, I just don't see another option. 20 years ago, there was an issue with parking, and then we lost more parking. There's about 40 parking spots in Harwich, and there's about 900 million tourists that come through.
Give or take.
Yeah, give or take, yeah. And I know they're shrill, but we do rely on them, and there's got to be some kind of give and take. If you have a house behind a commercial zone, obviously there are going to be people on your lawn, and it's tough, but we just have to live with it. I think there needs to be some sacrifice on both ends. That's
So
it.
if I could ask, are you in agreement with this proposal? Do you feel this helps?
I don't think it does. I think people are just going to keep parking further and further. I work at the shop sometimes, and everyone complains about the parking. They're like, oh, I'm parked all the way down there. And it's like, there's just no good way to go about doing this, really. But I do think this is a step backwards. If it's just one side of the street, people are going to park all the way at miles. People are going to go to the golf course. It's going to be bad, I think, for the local businesses.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Brianna Woodward, his wife. And yeah, I frequent George's. Obviously, it's delicious. And so, like, from yeah, I'm one of the tourist perspectives here, but from the business, from what I see, yeah, I think it would be a step backwards, and I just think it would be a waste of time and resources. It just really seems like a NIMBY issue where it's like, oh, I want to live near the epicenter, I want to live near the shops, I want to live near the beach, but you want to gatekeep it from everybody else who wants to enjoy it. It's just kind of like too bad. And the streets are narrow. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Everybody wants their big ass SUV. It's like, I drive a little Toyota. I don't like the fact that I have to navigate around these elephant cars either, but like, that's not, what are you going to do about it? And I don't know, every time I go to George's, everybody that's parked on that street, I know like the beach parking, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen because it does, and I'm one of them, so like, I don't know, be mad. But, be mad about it. But for the most part, I would say a good 80 to 90% of the people who park on that street, they have George's boxes in their hands. They're just getting their food. They're going home, or they're going to Hot Stove, getting some chowder. They're frequenting. And I think a lot of like the economy and stuff, it's based on that. And it's just like, it just seems very counterintuitive to be like, oh, we need this. We need the money from it. But then let's waste all the resources having cops babysit beachgoers. Like that just, I don't know, printing signs. It just seems like a waste of time and effort. I don't think it's going to solve anything. And to like mimic what Al said, it's just going to make the people who are visiting more mad. Like Jesus, you ever deal with someone who's hangry and they can't park? They want pizza and they got to walk 3 miles for it. Come on now. Like that just, I don't know. So yeah, just want to back up with everything Al said, which was obviously a lot more eloquent, but yeah, wanted to give, my perspective on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Elizabeth?
Hi, Elizabeth Harder, citizen of Harwich. The one thing I will say, getting really annoyed that I don't eat George's Pizza in the summer because I can't get near the place, is that Cranberry Liquors seems to have very good luck with keeping those 3 spots when you pull in as liquor store only. Do you know what I'm talking about? If you pull in by Cape Root, right? Those 3 spots against the building, 9 times out of 10, if I'm going to the liquor store, I can park there. I don't understand why, with whatever you decide to do with Cross Street, you couldn't have the first 3 spots from 28 North be George's parking only. because, like I said, people seem to respect Cranberry Liquors, so maybe they would respect George's.
I think the difference is that's a parking lot that's privately owned, and the group of owners have made those agreements, whereas Cross Street is a public street. I
But
don't
why-
think we could declare these are
Why
for
don't
George.
Why doesn't the town get to decide what's parking and what's not?
Because it's a public road. I don't think, I could park there and just sit in my car if I wanted. It's a public road.
Well, maybe you should buy the street. I don't know. It's just, it's so frustrating because
I
it
know
works
that.
there, it doesn't work there. I don't understand. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Bernadette Waystack, ditto on the pizza. It doesn't work necessarily at Cranberry Liquors. You're not seeing who else is coming to the liquor store or coming to Cape Roots. You're not seeing folks who are trying to get into Benson Young and Downs or the real estate office, where we own that land, and those 10 spots behind our building are only for people coming to our building. Does that work? No, of course not. Not all the time. But it's, as you said, Mary, it's the difference between a private lot and a public road. The problem's still the same. But it isn't, it's not accurate to even say it's working over there in the lot across the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Becca Arensfeld, and I own 2, 4, and 6 Cross Street. What I think we're losing in this issue is this is a traffic safety committee issue. This problem was brought up because of safety on that road, and it's all well and good saying that people are complaining that people are parking on their lawns. That is not the issue here. The problem is you cannot get down that road. It used to be just during the summer, but it's become a 9-month problem now. There is road rage going on the road. People are parking incorrectly. You can barely get a car through. My daughter lives at 6 Cross Street. She has special needs. I'm not going to play the special needs card. However, anybody of any of those neighbors could have an emergency at any time, and you could not get an emergency vehicle down that road. Last day of school, school bus sideswiped a car in front of Dune, right off of 28. She had been dreading that turn all season long. The last day of school, she sideswiped a car. There was the EMTs there, the police, the fire. The fire truck had to park all the way practically on Pleasant Street. If it was an emergency, you are going to have huge tragedies going on. This is not, oh my God, my grass isn't green. It's not a problem of that. It's seriously, you're going to have something that we're going to regret at one point. Either people killing each other on the street over road rage, or just a fire that the fire truck can't get to. And that's what the main thing is. As far as the parking goes, and Linda's diagram is wonderful, but what the public doesn't know, right now it's 2-hour parking right next to George's. There's 3 spots. There's a parking spot next to Dunes. The other problem that we have are delivery trucks that come down there that block the road as well at all hours of the day. Linda's proposal, what we thought would work was that parking spot outside. Linda, do you mind me talking about this? Okay. So the parking spot next to Dune, Linda, the Traffic Safety Committee is proposing that to be live parking only. So it could be a pickup spot. It could be where trucks can park. UPS, I've talked to the UPS drivers in the post office. Half the time, they can't get to where they need to deliver to. If that was a designated spot 24 hours a day, I think it would help a lot. The 3 spots next to George's are 2-hour now. The Traffic Safety Committee has advised that that would be reduced to 1 hour. The spots in front of my store are 2 hours. We've proposed that they get reduced to 1 hour. I'm a business owner. I'm taking away potential parking for my customers as well. But at the end of the day, don't we want our community to be safe? This is really a dangerous, dangerous situation. And if you don't believe me, go down there and sit one Wednesday night and see the shit show that goes on. It is terrifying.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, you probably know me. My name is Spiros Christakis. I'm the owner of George's Pizza. My nephew talked before. I agree and disagree with what I heard here today. I know the issue is safety and stuff, but you know what? That's not the only road in Harwich that has a problem. Then we should close all the roads that are narrow. I mean, I'm sure that if an ambulance comes, they'll open up the road for the person to come in to help. The problem is the parking. I understand that we have a huge issue in Harwich. Okay, we've been there 53 years. 1970, we opened the place. We're probably the oldest place in town and one of the oldest in Cape Cod. That doesn't mean we should have the road for ourselves. And it's not only for us. I've seen people park there and they go to my friend Gabe's place, they go to Med Minnow, they go to Amber, they go to the beach. What I suggest as an owner, I wouldn't mind if they keep the side where Rebecca's store is, that straight line, we can park there, and from the other side, they should put a sign like a limit time, or like an hour thing. And somebody should monitor that. The town can monitor that. How come they monitor in North End? You go to North End, you can park there for 2 hours. You park there for 2 hours and 5 minutes, they tow your car. They take it away. You get a ticket. We can do the same thing here. We're asking only for a specific spot. For us, it's crucial because every year we're losing spaces left and right. Yes, it's not our spaces, but it's spaces that were created in Harwich for the people, for the business in Harwich. Some years ago, and Cindy was here, they tried where the Harwich Chamber is to extend the parking lot back there. It was like about 30 more spaces. People from the residential area, which I'm not against that, but let's find a way to solve the problem. All the committees in all the towns, you know, the administrators in this town, they give licenses every year for businesses to open. Stop giving licenses. Fix the problem, which is the parking, and then give 200 licenses, not one. I have no issue with another restaurant opening up. I'm for competition. I know the business. We've been here forever. I'm not afraid of it. But the thing is, like, you can't give license every day. Everybody that applies for a license for a boutique store, for an antique store, for a restaurant, for a hair salon, whatever, no problem, get it. Don't you understand that there's going to be more people coming in? Where are these people going to park? We already have an issue. And now we're losing, like, where Gabe is now, where the Root supermarket is, which is a beautiful place and stuff like that, there used to be a parking lot there. It wasn't ours, it wasn't the Stoves, it wasn't the Med Minnows, it wasn't, the, you know, but people use that parking space to come to our place, to come to those places that don't have, you know, like parking. All of a sudden, the committee agreed to, okay, let's demolish the plaza, whatever, whoever the owner is, and build this place, okay? So now all this parking space lost. So every time we're losing and losing, and we're giving more and more incentives to people open up businesses without thinking in the future. The future is create parking spaces, and then all the private roads or all the residential roads, no parking. I agree with that. But you can't have somebody that's been there for so many years, and that road has been used for so many years with no problems. How many accidents we have in Cross Street? How many accidents have we had all these years in Cross Street? One time, maybe the bus hit some car or something, a school bus, and that was like, okay, I understand. Safety is more important. I understand. I'm totally for safety. But at the same time, we have to look and support the businesses that build this town, that pay taxes for this town, that employ people that work and pay taxes for this town and create jobs. That's my point.
Thank you.
And also, I want to say something, because of the music stroll, that's another thing that I think that the town also, I don't know if it's in your power or somebody else's power, instead of having people coming to the town, why don't we have a parking lot where the Harwich High School is, the community center, and have a bus, bring the people that want to see the music stroll, and drop them off at the CVS post office, and do the loop, Bank Street, just the bus. So nobody parks in the town. You don't have to put those stupid signs, no parking here, you know, it's my grass, it's whatever, and everybody will be happy. And the town, I'm sure, how much will cost to pay somebody once a week from 5 to 8 to do that loop thing? How many bus drivers do you need to do that? When you go to Martha's Vineyard, you don't park at Woods Hole in the harbor, you park like far away miles. And there's a bus, you pay a little fee, they take you, they drop you off the port, right? And you park at the parking lot. Why can't we do something like that here? That's my point, nothing else.
Thank you, George. And on the record, I do love
Spiros,
your
by the way.
pizza.
George,
Oh, I'm sorry.
George was my dad, that's okay.
I'm sorry,
You're the only
Spiro.
one in Harwich who doesn't know that that's Spiros.
But I've bought the pizza many times.
That's my middle name anyway, so I forgive you for now.
And maybe we should take another look at parking. Point well made. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Beltis, member of the committee. When we had a meeting at 2:04 that brought all of the complaints and issues with Harwich Center, one of my comments as a private citizen was that the Traffic Safety Committee is an advisory committee. We can't run the show. We just give advice. So I asked that the people that live in the area come up with a solution. Rather than us telling them what to do, they would tell us what they wanted. The map that Linda drew came out of the last meeting we had at Traffic Safety Committee at the Police Department. This is not something that we put together. This is something that they wanted. So this is not us. This is what they wanted.
Thank you.
That's where I'm coming from on that.
Appreciate the clarification. Richard?
A number of years ago, and I don't know, Link will know better than I will, and I don't mean to crosstalk to refer to him, but I don't know where the town owns to the end of the area. Is it the sidewalk or beyond the sidewalk? A number of years ago, people started putting posts in between the sidewalk and the street. And years ago, people used to park actually almost to the edge of the sidewalk, which was another 2 to 3 feet. And that made a huge difference on Cross Street. But when some of the neighbors, and I understand why they did it, started putting these posts between the sidewalk and the road, people had to park further into the road. So I don't know the exact location of the lots. I don't know the exact location of the road layout. I'm assuming the layout goes to at least the sidewalk or the other side of the sidewalk. And many of those posts or impediments that were put between the sidewalk and the road have now pushed the cars into Cross Street by another 3 to 4 feet. I don't know if it's addressed in the plan, I haven't seen the plan, but if those impediments were moved in the town layout, that would allow the cars to park probably a little bit closer to the sidewalk and not as much into the road itself.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, briefly, please.
I wanted to say about also the road. The police officer is here, he can suggest something else. Why don't we do Cross Street one way, from 28 going to Pleasant Street? That way, problem is solved. You can park on the left, you can park on the right now, and still there's room for 2 cars to go in and out. Yes, with caution, yes, with beeping, yes, with swearing, whatever. But, and we're talking July and August. We're not talking year-round for this thing, right? Imagine making it one way from 28, which releases traffic from 28, which is a good thing, right? And you go down the street, you take a ride on Pleasant Street or Mile Street, you go to Bank Street, you go from the other side, Forest Road, and you can park left and right, one way going in, that's it. Why can't we do that? And at the same time, my suggestion also, from the right side of the road, let's say you're on 28 and you get to Cross Street, right? So George's will be on your left, the other stores will be on your left, right? Or the jewelry store on your right, continue. The right side of the road, even though it's one way, you can have people park there, but put, again, restrictions. 1 hour only. That way, people that go to the beach, they're not gonna park there. But you have somebody to monitor, not to check if somebody has a beach towel inside or a chair. Because who's gonna park the car for 1 hour and go to the beach, right? So nobody will park for now. But for us, even half an hour is good enough for somebody, 15 minutes, to park the car, come inside, take the food, and leave. Because most of our business is to go. We have inside, as you know, guys, right? But most of the business is to go. For it's crucial at least to have some space to stop, put the hazards on, come inside, pick the food. So that would, I think that's another situation, I mean, a solution, suggestion, I guess. I don't know if it's a solution, but I don't know if it can be done. Like, do that part of Cross Street, make it one way. The residents wouldn't have an issue for that because they can get out from the other side.
Th-
Shouldn't be an issue. That's my
Thank you.
last point. Thank you.
Linda,
Just to say, at the meeting on July
you
5th,
got the mic.
at the meeting on July 5th, we did talk about 5 possible options for Cross Street. And we talked about number 1 was do nothing, and do nothing is always an option. The second one was one-way, Route 28 to Pleasant. Third way, one-way, Pleasant to 28. The fourth was the full boat of what the neighbors wanted. And the fifth was the compromise parking, which has then been agreed upon and presented here. So we did talk about the one-way and, of course, the do-nothing part. And Jeff, you were there. We went through each of them and were able to get the consensus of all the people, vote of the committee, that what was presented. But we did talk about one-way.
Thank you for clarifying. Anyone else, or are we ready to take a vote on this? Yes. Yes, thank you.
Just to mimic the point that my friend in the blue shirt here made. Sorry, I don't know your name, but the posts or whatever, and the lady who said from 6, 7, 10 or whatever the street is, I believe that's the end at the corner, and it's not just posts. And I know because I just parked there the other day, and I actually had this thought, and it's like convenient that it came up, is that I was like, wow, that is really unsafe for ambulances and stuff. And I think if the homeowners are so concerned with, you know, policemen and ambulances and wide fire trucks and all that getting down the street, you can't fight the tide. People are going to park, they're going to, you know, be there. But if you're going to put up posts and these big boulders, and it ain't landscaping, it's a dirt patch. It had big rocks so that you couldn't park closer to the sidewalk, which isn't, you know, private land, that's public as well. And it's like, if the people who live there are going to complain that, oh, you're in the roads, well, you're doing things that put us in the roads. It's like, I don't want to park in the road. I don't want to get sideswiped by a bus, but I also want to go eat some pizza and go to the frickin' beach. Like, I want to still live my life. And I just think it's a little, I don't know, just counterproductive and a little backwards to be like, oh, safety, and then do everything in your power to make it unsafe and then blame the people for it. It's
Okay,
just.
thank you. Yes, sir.
I would recommend that we go with the recommendation that the committee's doing, that the neighbors want. It's an easy fix for the time being. If it doesn't work, it can be undone. Doing one way and then canceling that later on is not a good solution. It's just going to confuse the people. So let's go with what we have, and if it doesn't work, we can change it.
Do I need to close the public comment?
No.
This is not a hearing?
No,
Okay.
it's not a hearing.
Are we ready for a motion on this, Michael?
I'm not ready for a motion.
Okay.
This is a conundrum, and I do feel for George's Pizza that's been there forever. But I also feel for the neighbors that are getting their cars blocked in their driveways. And there's nothing fair at all about that. It would seem to me, looking at this, some additional information from Link on the posts or the rocks or whatever they are and where they sit and being able to get off the road a little more makes sense. And a one-way makes sense. And the only map I've seen is the one that you created, but going further from that, is there additional parking that isn't going to interfere with the residents' homes? Is there any additional parking on that road past what we see?
North.
That can be parking spots on Cross Street?
I would say probably not. I think what is going to happen realistically is that people are going to go down that section of Cross Street, that one block, across Pleasant, and they're going to park, and so we'll be back here in about a year discussing the second part of Cross Street with the same set of issues. I mean, I think there is a real issue in parking in Harwich Port overall. In talking with Spiros this morning, that while the town did a great thing in putting a section of the schoolhouse parking lot for employees, that when his employees come to work, they can't park there because it's already chock full. They're not supposed to be parking all shift, which is basically, all day in the regular parking lot. So now what do? I mean, we've got some serious issues there in terms of parking. I hear it. I live in that area. On the stroll night, I know that if there was parking all over the place on Pleasant Street, it's a nightmare to try to get through. So now we put up the little orange signs, no parking on one side for the stroll. I get it. I think there's a bigger issue of parking in the port.
Well, thank you for bringing up my next point. My next point was, all we're doing is giving the problem to Pleasant Street.
Yep.
So all we're going to do by making any change tonight is to transfer those cars to somebody else's road, and we'll be back here as soon as they put together a petition and deliver it to you. To the board, I don't see one-way traffic is, there's no detriment in that. That doesn't change anything. Chatham just initiated 2 more roads with one-way parking. So this problem exists in other places. Chatham's probably our best example right now. And the neighbors do deserve some relief, but so does George's Pizza. And there was about 15 people at that meeting, if a liaison gave me the correct information, and most of it was the residents of that and business owners of that street that were there, and they're very concerned about it, as they should be. But it does seem to me that a compromise of making that a one-way street and having our DPW director look into impediments that may be in the road layout and having them removed and pushing the car off the street is a good compromise.
Well, Michael, we're in agreement here.
Say that out loud. Don't say that out loud.
But I think a one-way going down that street, with clearly the exception for emergency vehicles, but I think any of us, that if we see a flashing red light coming towards us, we pull over as quickly as we can. And there are a lot of driveways on that street, that section of street. You could pull over and let an ambulance come down the opposite way.
Real quick, Mary,
I
to quote
would-
our last fire chief, if there's a car or a gate or cars in my way, my firefighters will get through them.
Yep.
And
But
I
I
would
like
like to
the
invite,
idea of a one-way.
I would like to invite Spiros to be on our traffic problem committee.
I'll bring pizza.
And I am bringing, it's gotta be under $50.
Yes.
I do plan on bringing back to you, Madam Chair, the extension of the parking lot.
I noted it myself that we need to talk about that. I think we need to do that. Clearly.
Last time we did it, it was met with a lot of resistance because we had no site plan. So we should talk to the administrator, get a site plan, and bring that back soon, as well as private businesses, because there's an awful lot of private businesses that their whole employee parking is town parking lot, and they can be making a deal with somebody else to park their cars off-site and commuting in together. And then, as Harwichport continues to grow, which it will, we should think about shuttle buses from
Right.
another part of town. So I personally can't support this as it is, but do acknowledge that the residents need some relief. So does George's Pizza, and one way and removing the impediments seems like a good start. And 1 hour parking. Beach parking, they should not be parking there to go to the beach.
Julie, and then Jeff, and Don, I can't see you. Did you?
I'm still here.
You're here, okay.
So, exactly to that, I was gonna bring up the fact that, that the town parking lot, we got annihilated on that one, because we didn't have a site plan, and there was some good parking to be had back there. And I agree, I think the parking that we negotiated with TD, that's a shame, because it does fill up super fast. I'm not opposed to making it a one-way. I think it's not a bad idea. It's a safer turn coming off of 28th, and you don't have lefts coming off a cross street onto 28th, so that appeals to me. But I think the biggest, so those are two good improvements we can move forward on, but I think the biggest one we can really make a lot of relief on is getting back to the discussion about shuttle buses. We had some really good discussion about having even something run from 204 and do a loop. It could do Town Hall and down Bank Street. So you have parking back here on the, weekends or in the evenings that are available. You have 204. So if we could look at how we can devote some funds to doing that, that's a great summer job for a young person, because we really are only talking about a couple months out of the year. And it's imperative to the businesses, and it's very important to all the people living downtown. So I appreciate that. I think it's great that if you would look at any impediments to the road, because that doesn't make any sense either. So.
Can I say something real quick? Sorry.
Um,
Can I say something real quick?
You've had 2 shots at it, okay?
Just one comment.
You got to go to the mic, and I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. I love you, but you got 2 minutes.
Okay. I want to make sure this is not a George's Pizza against the residents of Cross Street. This is businesses that don't have parking, and they're here, because in Cross Street, it's not only George's Pizza. They're parking there for every kind of business that are in town, okay? Let's make that straight. That's one thing that I want to clear here, okay? And one other thing I wanted to say is, like, the one way, like, as I said, from 28th towards Pleasant Street, I think that will solve a lot of issues. That's like, I don't know, it makes sense, I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I, as the liaison to this committee as well, I first would like to say thank you to the committee, Officer Gosharian, the public who came to the meeting. I think that's fantastic, DPW, and everyone else who participated in this. And then, obviously, I want to thank the people who came up to speak in opposition, because that's what this forum is truly all about, transparency and having the ability to have your say. I do want to ask, though, because my memory, Link, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Was there a reason why, or Linda or Jerry, was there a reason why the one-way didn't really spark a lot of conversation? Was there a DPW reason or a traffic safety from Officer Gosharian? Was there a reason that I can't remember?
I think during that meeting, there was a fair amount of the residents that said, we don't want to have to deal with 28 in the middle of summer to get to my house.
So the fear of...
I think it was that the traffic jams that happened on 28 was an impediment to people that would live on that section of Cross Street getting to their residences.
Okay. So fair, and thank you for that. And I just would like to make it known that last night, picking up my pizza, I literally had to back up from about the Dune parking lot on the left, almost all the way back to Pleasant Street, because of the bottleneck that was created at 28 with people trying to pull in. There is no easy fix to this. This is a very complicated, multivariable issue. And I realized I can back up for a long way, because that was needed. I also learned a new term, which is unintended consequences. And I think that's what Michael McCaskill here was talking about, is you kind of displace one problem and move it to another area. I also want to say, before I yield here, is that it is incumbent upon the businesses to, if they see a car parked in an area that's 1 hour or live parking only, instead of just not calling our police department and formally making a complaint, that does no good for anybody, because this committee went and looked at data. And the data doesn't really support much happening on Cross Street, because nobody's calling in complaining. And lastly, I do feel for the residents on the road. Multiple people have talked to me over the last couple of days in preparation for this meeting, talking about people blocking in their driveway. And that's just, and by the time the police and the tow truck and everybody gets there, you're an hour out of your home. And that is wildly unfair in my mind. I can't even wrap myself around that, and maybe that's why I live in the woods. But at the end of the day, we do have a massive parking issue here in Harwich Port, and I don't have the solution to that, but I think this kind of discussion is where it's going to come out of, some kind of solution. So jury's out right now with me. I'm not really sure what to do.
Just to comment on what Jeff
Go
just
ahead,
said,
Michael.
and for the residents' purposes, a one-way can simply have a sign at the far end of it that says no through traffic, residents only. And as we had a speeding problem in Harwich Center and the police parked there for a few months, people slowed right down. So increased police presence on Cross Street and eyeballs. You're down there all summer, Wednesday nights especially, on foot as well. But increased police presence also makes sense to me. But the residents we could do a simple sign that says residents only no through traffic one way. And again, that's not done just in Harwich. That's almost every town on Cape Cod.
So residents only on 28?
No. So coming off 28 is how you would access
Right.
Cross Street.
Right.
Coming off of Pleasant Street, for the residents that
Oh,
live
I
on
see.
Cross
Residents
Street,
only.
we can give them residents only no through traffic.
So I've mostly just listened for the last whatever, but I would just like to comment that you've made it painfully obvious that we need to do something about parking. So I think we ought to go back and pursue, we'll have to talk to our dear friend Cindy in the back about expanding parking down at the Chamber of Commerce. I think that has to happen. I also think everyone here has had great things to say about it, but so has our committee. These three individuals and one or two that aren't here, including public safety, a police officer, and Link. And if this is their recommendation, I want to go with that. If we want to talk about one-way street, let's do that at a later time. But if this is the best they could come up with, listening to businesses, residences, their own expertise, I'm going to go with what they recommend. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to jump back from your comment, but a couple of things. The way it's posted, these are the only options that we can vote on.
Right.
Number one, and I hate to throw more water on things, but correct me if I'm wrong, Chief. If every impediment was taken out, how would you view people parking on sidewalks?
Dave Gilmet, Chief of Police. Madam Chair, parking on sidewalks has always been illegal. It'll get you a ticket if we find you.
And I guess that was my point. I mean, you could remove the impediments. I'm not sure whether you get 5 inches, 6 inches, whatever, but you're not going to get what you did in the good old days, like 30 or 40 years ago, where you could park on the sidewalk. I mean, occasionally the police do a blind eye to events where people park across the sidewalk, but that's not a policy thing. I mean, it's against the law. And you can't consider that as a solution to anything.
Okay, I think, are we ready for does someone want to make a motion?
Can I just ask one follow-up question?
Of course you
One thing
can.
we didn't talk about was, if we were to proceed with this plan, what's the time frame on doing it? Because it's already almost August. So if the idea is, and the only reason I ask that is because if it's a little bit of a time to get this up and running, then maybe we unfortunately have to table it and go back to the idea of doing a one-way and doing a public hearing, et cetera, whatever else we have to do to have that conversation.
Linda?
Well, I think we're talking about some signs. Lincoln?
Some signs and some line painting, I would like to think a matter of weeks, and we have vendors already in line to do some of the work.
Okay.
I'll move that we vote to approve the Cross Street recommendation from Traffic Safety Committee,
Which one?
the one that's presented,
The plan.
The plan.
The sketch that Linda did.
that is presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it to address this for the next month, as long as we could try to make this expeditious, because it only makes sense to try and deal with this temporarily, but I think going the one way, and Michael's comment on the opposite side of Pleasant Street makes sense. I mean, if we're gonna make some improvement, this is all we can really do now, but it has to happen fast.
Linda?
And I think as we have discussed at the Traffic Safety.
You want to grab the mic, because I can barely hear you.
Oh, no.
I think that as we discussed at the Traffic Safety Committee, we've discussed with the neighbors, it's not, while it is worse in the summer, it's year-round. It's a hassle year-round. So it's by degrees a little bit less of a hassle, but I don't think that it should be completely tabled. I think we should move ahead I think that we can get some signs changed, because basically that's getting a sign and getting a screwdriver, changing the signs out, and that's it, because there are already some line paintings there. But I think that we could do this fairly quickly.
Thank you. Jeff?
So just in the discussion aspect of this,
Yes.
phase of this, I made the motion, I support it, but I would like to make it clear that I would like to really explore the one-way traffic flow pattern, and because I think that's a really good idea, but something needs to be done right now from the safety standpoint, as I witnessed last night. But I do want to put it on record that I want to explore this further.
Michael?
Thank you for that, Jeff. So is the intent of this motion to make this permanent going forward?
So,
Until we do something differently.
No expiration date to this
No,
motion.
no expiration.
Okay.
No.
And then I would just, for the record, point out, I spoke to at least two other businesses, and Ciro's testified tonight before us that this is not a year-round problem. And I cannot remember the last time I went to George's Pizza off-season that I had a problem finding a parking spot not on somebody's lawn. I do not believe this to be a year-round problem. It's a summer problem.
Linda?
I do go to George's Pizza year-round, and inevitably, there is not a parking space when we drive the car over there to get the pizza, which is very good pizza, and one of us, my spouse, or I, will sit in the car, the engine running, while the other one runs in, picks up a pizza, and comes back out. But inevitably, we are not in a parking spot. We are in front of somebody's yard.
I knew she was going to have to argue.
Madam Chair. Michael,
Go ahead, Jeff.
thank you. I would also like to add, even if it's just 6 cars, 3 on the George's Pizza side and 2 on the other side, that creates a bottleneck where the road narrows to 28. And 28 is where all the traffic flow is. So again, I'm in support of this right now, understanding that it has no expiration, but I'd like to look into this further to come up potentially with a better solution because I hear you, Spiros, and I respect what you're saying, and I think there might be a better solution here, but for right now, I think.
You know something, Jeff?
You
Go to there,
can't,
but make it quick.
brief, very brief.
Just to give you an example.
Sure.
Today we were closed, and I passed there 11 o'clock, and the cross street was full parked from both sides.
Correct.
Give you an example. So where's these people going?
No, I hear
They're
you.
going somewhere else, and then going to the beach. So
Right.
it's not,
Right.
like.
You're right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Joe, was that you? No?
No.
Oh, sorry, Don.
Thank you, Mary. I'm kind of with Michael here. I mean, if this situation, if you were making this motion that had an expiration date on it, for us to just consider it now, see what happens, and then get back and talk about it again, I'd be voting for it. But I'm not going to vote for it as a permanent change because permanent changes have a way of becoming permanent, and we're not going to reconsider this.
What's the difference with this and anything else we decide? It can always be voted differently the next week. I don't understand the expiration need.
Street patterns are something that people get into, and they just recognize as patterns. If we make this clear that it's a seasonal thing right now, and then we're going to reassess it, that's a different story from just changing the street signs.
Julie? Just to follow up on your point about the expiration. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I agree with Michael and Don.
Please, if you're going to talk,
Wait, can you speak
step
up a little bit
outside
more?
if you're going to talk, because the
Can you say
microphone
that
picks
louder?
it up. Julie?
So what I'm saying is, in the sense of the expiration, I hear you, but I also think that putting an expiration date on it makes us move, makes us go to the next phase. So maybe we ask traffic safety to come back to us, let's just say at the end of September or October with additional discussion so that we all know it's on our timeline, we're going to reassess this, they're going to reassess it, we're going to move forward with what I think we are collectively saying. We think maybe a one-way is the answer. So, but if we put a timeline on it, then we know that it's on us to address it.
Richard? And then Linda.
I'm very, very calm and collected and not letting my anger out. Do something for these people tonight, please. okay? You can charge traffic safety to come back to you at the end of September with additional alterations if necessary. I've been across the street from George's now for 20 years. I sit in the window and watch the traffic. After Columbus Day weekend, there's not an issue with this. I watch it. I've parked there. I leave my office every night at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. It's not on summertime. It's a horror show. It's an absolute horror show. So just give them some relief tonight. And expiration, all of these things, give them some relief, make them come back in September and look at some of the other changes, whether it's one way or whatever. But give them some relief right now. Don't wait another week or 2 weeks to have another meeting. Give them, please, some relief.
Thank you, Richard. Linda,
Could I'm sorry?
sorry, you're up next.
Please.
Linda.
So what I'm hearing is to have us continue to look at the street and maybe propose something different. I think that's what I'm hearing. I think that, I'm not sure September is the right timing, because by the time Lincoln is going to get somebody there to signs, et cetera, we could be potentially talking the middle of August, if that. I think that we need to watch how this goes for at least a few months after the signage gets changed. So I would suggest that maybe we come back maybe closer to December, because it'll give us an idea as to how that's really going. I mean, I happen to personally like the one-way concept, because I think it does solve 10-ton problems. I think we can figure out how to sign it so the neighbors can go both ways. But I like it, because the streets around here, it's a cut-through street, because you don't want to go through Harwich Port in the middle of the summer. And I do the same thing. I take Bank and I go over miles and try to go around it. Absolutely. But I'm not sure the end of September is I think we'd be looking more give us some time to look at it and see how it works.
Let the neighbors.
And let the neighbors tell us how it works.
Jeff, did you want to say something?
Well, I'd like to amend my motion,
Okay.
if I may.
Yes, you may.
So I would like to amend my motion to accept, let me find this again, to approve the cross-street recommendation from the Traffic Safety Committee as presented, with adding an expiration date of November 1st to have traffic and safety come back to the select board with other options.
And some discussion on how well that did or did not work.
That's part of my motion,
Okay.
Madam Chair. Thank you.
You seconded it.
Yeah,
You
and
second
I
it?
would second that. yeah.
Okay, we have,
In the interest
have a
of
motion
getting
and a
something
second.
passed, right, is why I'm amending, so.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hallelujah, that's 5-0, Joe.
5-0 on the amended main motion.
On the amendment as Jeff described.
I think Julie lost her pet cat. What are you doing down there?
I'm doing John's power management.
Oh,
Madam
Lordy.
Chair, not to belabor with parliamentary,
Yes,
the board just adopted the motion and the amendment, correct?
Yes.
yes,
Yep.
yes. Probably not as neatly as we should have, but we did do it.
It's painful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all that you put into it, and you've made it painfully aware how difficult this is.
Get the other part.
So thank you. Do you need to adjourn?
No, they got one more topic.
Oh, yeah, oh, I'm sorry, I was kicking you out before your time. Route 39 and Chatham Road.
That
We could do
relatively
that, too.
undiscussed intersection.
All right, if you want to get Route 39 and Old Chatham Road intersection, again, a brief history. It's a topic of discussion since about 2016. Terrible sight lines turning onto Route 39 from Old Chatham Road. Bad angles, you can't see from the right. We did have a memo from the town engineer in 2018 with recommendations. Traffic Safety Committee made a capital plan request, which was, one was finally submitted by the DPW. I did send you a copy.
Yes, you did, thank you.
And at this point in conversation, again at the Traffic Safety Committee on July 5th, there was no support for a one-way going from 39 onto Old Chatham Road. And I had a conversation, I asked our Dan Pelletier from the Water Department, because they have delivery trucks coming up and down that road and trying to get back onto 39. And he took a look at how Lover's Lane is versus the turning radius of a truck, blah, 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 and it's got to go this way, and et cetera. And he said it's not going to work for those trucks. That more than likely the truck would have to pull out so much onto Lover's Lane in order to come around and be able to make then a turn onto 39. So he was not, he said that for cars, yes, trucks would be very difficult. So that one-way has been, because I'm a fan of one-ways. I think they solve a lot of problems. So he did say that. We did talk briefly this morning about whether or not you could make it one-way except for trucks. And then we decided, we talked about that and said, that's going to confuse people. Gee, the truck, this big honking truck can go up, but my little car can't. And we thought that that would just create confusion overall. So we basically are looking for what is the status. I know that on June, I guess it was June 5th, it was on the agenda for the select board. Thank you, Michael, for putting that on there. And so I guess tonight what we'd be looking for is what's the status? Is there a plan? What are the action steps? Is anybody assigned to those action steps, et cetera? And, are there funding issues? So there is.
Just to clarify, you're talking now the procurement of an engineering study to redesign that intersection?
Yes, I'm looking for what is the action plan to
Okay.
get us from thinking about it to a done
Okay.
stage. There's a variety of steps. Do we have those action steps at this point? Because we haven't heard anything come back to us.
Okay, we do have the procurement list on the agenda, but Joe, would you be able to comment on that one at this point while we have safety here?
Sure. Generally speaking, as I understood the discussion that occurred on July 11th, ZBW director will be working with administration staff to do a acquisition of engineering and surveying support that we're going to talk about under the procurement later on, with the goal of having that engineering and surveying information inform a construction project, so-called. I want to just put out there that these are procurement terms, not that we're going to necessarily tear up a roadway or build a bridge or anything, but that would be the next step. You do your engineering and surveying, and then you determine what actually is going to impact upon the roadway itself, and the time frame for that is to have that added to the capital outlay plan through the capital outlay process that will begin this fall, to then have an article be part of the capital outlay plan next spring. So
Okay.
that would have us going out to bid presumably on a construction-type project sometime around July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Next July.
Yep. Michael?
Mayor, I'll keep it brief, promise. July 11th, Joe, you just referenced July 11th. Was that a board meeting?
No, that's my understanding of the Traffic Safety Committee's meeting
Okay.
that occurred earlier this
Linda,
month.
you said June 7th was the last time I had it on the agenda?
June 5.
June 5th. I have to say, I'm completely disappointed that it's taking traffic safety after our board members brought it up 4 times, I believe, maybe 3, that we're nowhere further than we were. And at that meeting, the consensus of the board was to get this done and to start working on it, because it was an accident waiting to happen. So the continued kicking this can down the road, it's in my mind, absolutely unacceptable. Link, I believe you were tasked with, and I know it was part of the conversation, was reaching back out to the homeowner and at least starting there to see if they were willing to still give us a piece of land or sell us a piece of land. Has that been done yet? And I would defer, I guess, to Joe, and then maybe Joe to Link, however it's supposed to happen, but
Joe, you, Link?
The director's here. I think he can
Director's
speak
here.
for his
Go-
actions.
You have the floor, Link.
And so I guess the question is simplified. Has anything else transpired since that June 5th meeting?
To answer your first question, yeah, I've had 2 conversations with the homeowner, and they are amenable to working with the town to get that intersection straightened out. Of course, their question is, how much property, which we don't know because you've got to start with surveying and engineering.
And where are we with the tree that we all discussed on, I believe, Ginny Hewitt's property that you were going to go look at to see if it made any sense to cut that tree down?
That, through Madam Chair, that was looked at, and we did not, I looked at that with, I believe, Officer Holmes, who is their traffic safety officer, and him and I both agreed that that was not a line of sight issue whatsoever. We did notice there was a sign that was a line of sight issue, and then I had that moved that day.
Thank you, Link. And then, we have money. So basically, I guess to the board, is it acceptable to wait to go to bid on a project on July 1st next year? Or does it make more sense to put in an additional capital request for drainage? Because I believe the $1 million+ that we're holding in DPW on road maintenance is for drainage ahead of septic work. And now we're way out there on more septic work that needs to have drainage done simultaneously. And we have $1 million in an account plus. Does this project not mean enough to the board at this time? And we should wait till we do a capital request, capital plan adjustment, and go through that whole process?
Joe, is there any reason we can't use that money?
I think you want to hear from your director.
Yes, Jerry.
Sorry, the other director.
The other director.
You got demoted, huh?
You didn't have your hand up, Link.
You're hired.
I did, I was looking for the administrator.
Link and then Jerry, how's that?
This was discussed at the traffic safety meeting we had last, and I'll advise the board that we have approximately $2 million in Chapter 90 money that's been unallocated that we're setting aside. We have a new $700,000 article, again, that we're setting aside from, potholes, line striping, and a couple hundred goes to normal maintenance. We have a meeting, I think, tomorrow, with the water superintendent and his consultants, the GHD, working through this. We clearly don't have enough money to begin with to stay ahead of this game and put new drainage on the roads we're sewering. So we have been trying to be as frugal as possible. Yes, if the board directed us to go do this, we could get this in the works and use either funding source. We could make a Chapter 90 project request out of it, or we could use our road article. I would recommend against either, because we've had this plan in place now, and we have not put new drainage on all the roads we sewered because this happened. We were caught by surprise the last time, and it makes absolutely no sense to go and sewer a road, pave a road when you're done it, and have old antiquated drainage. Then you could dig up the road after the fact, and it makes no sense to do that.
Now it's
Thank you.
Jerry's turn.
All right, I've been on this, thank you, Madam Chair, since its inception. I once claimed that I want the island named after me because it's been around so long. To do this, we need the engineering, and then we can answer the question to the homeowner, and then legal has to come involved with it and figure out a deal, whether it's gonna be a permanent easement, land taken, eminent domain, and figure that out. That's legal. So the first step is engineering, then legal, and then the actual work can start. We had a town engineer in this town, and the position hasn't been filled. My question to you, through you to Joe, is that salary money still there? And can we use that for engineering, use it to hire a consultant and get the engineering out from the salary, or is that, you can't cross accounts?
I'll let Joe, but I believe that money has been used in lieu of having an employee. We have an engineering firm that money is used for a variety of projects, and this would be another one that could go that route. You can clarify, Joe?
You nailed it.
Okay.
And there's money left or not?
Through the chair, no, the town, while continuing to search for a town engineer, has relied upon the town engineering salary line to fund a contract with VHB predominantly for this kind of engineering work. So the town has not been without engineering, while we have been without a person. And so, no, those funds are already allocated for that contract.
Can we add to the contract?
Theoretically, no, because of the requirements under the Commonwealth for expansion of contracts. We're probably looking at greater than 20%, which puts us against the procurement rules.
Michael, and did I see Jeff too?
So just back to the Chapter 90 funds and the $2 million and staying ahead of things. What's the, if we hired an engineer, we took $25,000 out of the $2 million, are we gonna be crippled to get the engineering done so that we can do a real capital request and at least be somewhere with this project in the near future rather than continuing to kick it down the road?
No, it's a drop in the bucket to get it moving. I thought we were talking of the whole kit and caboodle, which is about $300,000.
Originally I was, but now I'm just trying to concede to some.
If it's the board's pleasure, we could certainly dip into those funds. I mean, we have an untouched $700,000 that was approved at town meeting. Been very supportive of our roads, and I'm very proud of the roads we have.
Should be.
In Harwich, and I'd like to keep it that way.
But that makes sense. If this has been kicked down the road since, I forget what year you said, Linda.
16.
$25K to do the engineering, and then you could put the construction into next year's budget.
Well, first it would have to be legal.
Well, legal
No,
too.
no.
No?
Plan first.
Through,
First and then legal.
Yes, okay. Link.
from a year and a half ago, I have the engineering and survey at $49,900. I have to imagine that's gone up a little, so it's not like just a drop in a bucket sort of, but against our road money, we could make do.
Jeff?
Please, thank you, Madam Chair. Link, what would be the timeline for the next, forgive me for not quite understanding exactly all this, but for the next group of drains that are gonna go in, that are gonna take from that $2 million?
If you were to ask me Wednesday, I'd have a better answer for you, since we're meeting tomorrow with GHD and Mr. Pelletier to discuss this very issue.
Is it something that reasonably, we could think that it would reasonably happen in the next 6 months to a year?
Mr. Pelletier?
Hi, Dan.
How you doing? Dan Pelletier, Water Wastewater Superintendent. So we're looking right now, exploring incorporating, replacing the drainage as part of the Phase 3 work. Phase 3, we are looking to begin construction, I would say, at the spring, and it's going to be a 24 to 36-month construction sequence after that. So conceivably, we could begin using those funds as early as this spring.
Okay, thank you.
This spring, meaning 24.
Yeah.
And again, as a freshman, don't we get $700,000 yearly for this? Linda, I'm 100% in support of using our funds to, the funds that are allocated to move this project forward. I think this town can handle that. Yeah.
Jerry?
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Trying to beat me now?
I know, I forgot where I was.
We're a little more flexible than usual.
That's thankful for that, through the chair. We will probably be having a fall town meeting.
You know something I don't?
Will there be another town meeting?
Sorry, Mary.
later on?
When were they going to tell us?
Don't know. That has not been decided.
Okay, that if one were to come up, we could take and put an article in for the engineering and replace the funds to down the line.
Well, I would ask Joe if that can happen. May I ask
Chair?
Joe?
You just did.
Joe, may I ask if that's a reasonable solution to this?
Ish.
Okay.
The answer that I gave on surveying and next steps and capital was with the understanding that the board has the right to either direct that a special town meeting occur, but that is not at present being contemplated by me. If it's being contemplated by others, we'll have that conversation, but I have not approached you folks with potential dates, nor have I worked, more importantly, if I can say that, with our clerk and moderator to make sure they're available. So the scenario I envisioned was not predicated on a special town meeting between now and next May.
Thank you.
You could have one.
Well, springtime is May, so we could have an article to reimburse Links Fund in May.
Correct. There are articles that we could do that could be expended immediately after town meeting.
Absolutely.
Versus with the fiscal year start.
Thank you. So if we're talking,
Keep going.
if we're talking about something that's been going on for 8 years, I'm 100% with you on this, and I think, God bless you, Julie. I'm 100% with you on this. I think we have to move forward with this. So maybe that can be the reasonable solution.
Michael, then Link.
Joe, do you need a motion or a consensus of the board to either work with current engineering and surveying funds that the town has, or to work with the Chapter 90 money to start the process so that we can get a picture of what it all looks like?
Not necessarily. The issue that I was going to bring up under the procurement discussion later on is everything we've just talked about is exempt from procurement when it relates to engineering services. However, it has been the practice of the town that regardless, the town still adhere to the best practices. That's a fancy way of saying that because we're contemplating $300,000 for supplies and services, that requires an invitation for bid. That is a 6 to 8 week process minimum. However, the town can, through the direction from the board, direct the CPA CPO, wrong vowel at the end, the chief procurement officer to proceed as allowed under the procurement laws.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I want to record that if I could very quickly, so Member McCaskill moved. Member Howell seconded that the town can rely upon.
In a new spirit of cooperation.
Any discussion?
That would be it. As far as funding, I don't need direction from the board, but given the level of contract that's going to come to you, our procurement process will identify the funding source. So it'll either be Chapter 90 or an article or any combination therein. But I did note that at 8:02 PM, you, my watch, I didn't look at that, that the board has authorized me to proceed in accordance with procurement requirements, not necessarily standard practice of the town in this one case.
No,
Okay.
we just moved. We haven't voted yet.
And you,
Oh, I thought it was
have,
moving voted, that's why.
Give me mine back. I'd love to vote on it.
Sure.
do we need to conclude that vote, or did you
Yes.
just need consensus?
No, we need a vote.
Okay, all right. We're done discussing?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 5-0.
Not to belabor this, it's been
Yes.
going on a while. However, I'd like to point out that securing engineering and surveying these days has been very challenging. So the time frame on which, if all the stars align, to get something under contract and physically going, I cannot speak articulately to you about.
Understood, but it starts with the first day we make a move. So you don't not do it because it's slow.
And Mayor, if I
Michael.
can, and Link, I hope you take from this conversation, this is very important to the board, and we want to start working on it right away.
Yep, I get that.
Okay, thank you.
And Link, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah. Can we leave now?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for your attention to all of our traffic safety issues this evening, and thank you very much, Board, for moving forward on good old Hope and Go. We appreciate it very much, and the people who use that intersection will also appreciate it.
And we, as a board, appreciate all that the committee does. That's not easy work, so thank you.
Thank you all.
Adjourned.
And the record reflects they adjourned at 8:05.
Okay? Mr. Bowden?
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chairman. I guess my comments came too late to address this last issue. I live at 800 Orleans Road, in the yellow house right across from Chatham Road and Route 39. If there's more, I would consider myself almost an expert
on what goes on there. I lived there for 20 years. I watched the accidents, all this good stuff. In fact, I'll have to bore you with a little caveat that happened this year. This was a topper this year. Because I can always tell when the people from off Cape are here is because the amount of the FUs I hear. Now, I'm in my house with the windows closed and all this, and just about 3-4 weeks ago, I'm in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I hear this traffic stopping, and I look out the window, and here's this guy outside his car, and he must have gone on for a minute, the FUs. Luckily, no one in the crowd out there had a gun because, well, we didn't know how that would round up. Anyways, that's neither here nor there now. This issue has been going on for like forever. And I don't always agree with Mr. Mike McCaskill here, but a while back, I read in the Chronicle where I get all my news. That's all the news I get is from in the Chronicle. And Mike made a statement, get her done. Find the money, let's get this thing done. So here we are, we're back kicking the can down the road. We need a new can. The can is worn out. We got to throw another can on the field to start kicking that one down. So now, you know, and I hear this again tonight. I thought I was in a housing meeting because we kicked the can on that one. So now we kick the can on this one. The best solution was the one that was presented, and I don't know who shot it down about making that one way. The truckers don't run the town, and the truckers aren't stupid. When they find out they can't come out on Chatham Road and make a left-hand turn onto 39, they're going to stop going that way. You know, they're not going to revolt and do whatever. I don't know why we're all afraid of a few truckers. Once they know they can't go that way, they'll go another way. And it's the trucks that cause most of the problem, because here you got this big-ass blankety-blank truck, and you have to get out into the lane to safely see what's coming. And of course, you know, trucks don't come off the line as fast as cars do. They just kind of, you know, go through the gears, so you're just lumbering out. And the other issue on 39, I know the police don't want to hear it, but it's the speed limit. It's like racetrack. I know in the center, we got to drop down to 25. That's great. They come around this corner here.
Art, I don't want to stop you,
Okay.
but speed limits isn't on the agenda. Let's
Okay,
just
that-
stick with the
I'll
topic.
go by that one.
Thank
But
you.
anyways, let's get back. It needs to be corrected. And the one way I thought, it was a very simple, economical way to do it. Now we're going to do something else, and maybe that's going to happen and maybe not, but it might not happen in my lifetime. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, the consent agenda. This should go quickly, right, Jeff?
One would hope.
I have a few items on this.
Oh, my God.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I move to accept the resignation of Carol Ridley, Community Preservation Committee, effective immediately.
You can do them all. You can do,
I move to vote and appoint election workers from names submitted by the Harwich Democratic and Republican Town Committees. I move to vote to appoint Noreen Donahue to the Bylaw Charter Review Committee, term to expire 6/30/2024. I move to vote to appoint Phyllis Thompson to the Recreation and Youth Commission, term to expire 6/30/2026. I move to approve the Select Board meetings of July 10, 23 and July 17, 23. And I move to vote to designate Kathleen Barrett, Finance Director, Town Accountant, as the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA reporter relative to the Barnstable County ARPA application portal.
I move to second everything he moved.
You
Any
move to second that?
discussion?
Then I second your movement.
Just like to say thank you to Carol.
Second. Yeah, absolutely.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, Joe.
Just so it doesn't get lost, Mary, a special thank you to Carol Ridley. She did an awful lot for CPC. And
Yes.
And in addition to what he's saying, just to be mindful of the fact that she was our representative, one of our two representatives through the CPC, so we are in dire need of another person because she doesn't come ex officio from a committee. She's our appointment.
Okay, so she doesn't go through the interview committee?
She would go through the interview committee. Otherwise, there are certain committees that have ex officio representation.
I've
like,
got it. Okay.
Planning board, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
but this one is one of our two picks that we directly select.
And we might have someone applying for that.
Working on it.
We're working on it. Okay. Next is new business. New business A, the Harwich liquor license regulations for the June 21st, 2023 alleged noise violation for Lucky Labrador, Inc., DBA Perks, located at 545 Route 28. Since this is my first chairmanship of a alleged liquor violation, I talked to counsel, Jeff Blake, to get his advice. And he advised that there's basically two things we have to look at tonight. A is, was there a violation? And then the second thing we can look at is some reasonable judgment about the intention, or there's another word that's escaping me at the moment. So I assume you have all read it. You've read Chief Gilmet's letter. Anyone want to comment on their views on this potential violation?
Madam Chair, if I could, I apologize. Your purpose this evening under that section is determine whether the facts as presented in the chief's memorandum warrant further action or hearing.
Yes, that's the item under discussion.
And we typically refer it to the town administrator for, to a
If
findings
we're
of
going to do
facts.
a hearing. Julie?
So, I thank you. I read the chief's memo, and I think the officer who was on scene reported and did a thorough job of looking around to make sure and spoke to the appropriate people and spoke to the owners. And I think it was really just an oversight, a mix-up with the app and the turning on. I don't think there's action for this board to take.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would
Jeff?
echo the same sentiments. I think this was an accident and an honest one. And I think Perks handled it perfectly. Thank you to the chief and the responding officer and the person who called it in. But I don't think this rises, I think this should end right here, in my opinion.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to disagree, but we've also, we're in ongoing litigation with other people in the area, and I would feel a lot more comfortable if we treated these things up front in the same manner, so that we do everything equally and refer it to the town administrator and have him report back, and I'm pretty confident that that's going to be the result, is after a hearing, that there wasn't a finding that it was a deliberate violation. But in the past, we've handled all these things by referring them, so I'm not sure I really want to set a precedent that we're treating people differently.
I'm told that that's not how this has been handled, that some haven't even come to the board, that they were just decided by the chair that they didn't need hearing. Anyone else want to comment? I'll comment then. I think this was clearly inadvertent. Two fairly new employees didn't realize they hit the switch for outside speakers. Whoever the complainant was, if that person had gone next door, they probably could have stopped the noise a lot quicker than calling the police and getting someone dispatched. My recommendation is that we don't need to, I don't want to burden the town administrator chasing something that was so inadvertent.
I don't ever recall making a decision not to hold a hearing on my own.
Oh.
I do know that council weighed in quite often about what was defendable and what was not defendable.
Mhm.
That's what my memory serves me.
Yeah.
But I would, and to Don's point, I agree about precedents, but I do know that in the past, we have had mistakes, more in the morning than at night, where something was flipped on, and the opening crew flipping on an app, to me, screams mistake. Teenager, I think, was one of the words used in there. I don't believe there was anything blatant. The owners were not on site. I think the owner reached out rather quickly, or the police reached out to the owner rather quickly, was very apologetic, and I don't think that this rises to the level. to Don's point, if this was a serving thing or an at-night rowdy crowd, it's packed, I think we have no option.
Right.
But I think on this one, given the time of day and the fact that they were found inside, not outside, listening to this noise, I would support board members in not bringing this one forward.
Anyone else? Don?
Yeah, without appearing to be a moron in public, I would vote to agree with that, but I just wanted to get out the rationale for not treating this in the exact same way, because this doesn't rise to the same magnitude at all.
Right.
Agreed, Don. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don. Do we need a motion on this? Or just by taking no action?
I believe council will advise you that your obligation as the local licensing authority is to determine whether or not the alleged violation as presented by the chief warrants a hearing or not.
I move that the alleged violation presented to us by the chief, that we take no action and it does not rise to the level of action needing to be taken.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Thank you.
Mary, if I may?
Yes.
Us outlining to the business what we took as an action tonight, along with the comments about it being a mistake, and them knowing that we took it up and decided that it was a mistake, but knowing that we took it up is appropriate. So a letter to them, maybe? Joe?
I prefer to
I'll let
defer
you
to
and the-
council on.
You and the chair and the council decide.
Okay. Next is a debrief on the Select Board Working Group held on July 17th, 2023. This was a session to talk about potential zoning changes that could help us increase housing. So that was the premise. We invited 3 people to join us, the chair of the Planning Committee, Duncan Berry, the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Brian Sullivan, and a representative from the local planning committee, and we had Margot Fenn there in the chair's absence. I think it was a good session. They're basically brainstorming sessions where any topic can be thrown out and bandied about. And I came up with 5 out of the items that we talked about that it sounded like we had consensus that we ought to move forward. So I'd like to quickly read through them, and if anyone wants to add or subtract, we can go from there. The first was to change the zoning code to provide the same rights to build or convert a structure to a 2-family residence as allowed by special permit for a multifamily on a non-conforming lot. That sounded like maybe just an error in the zoning bylaw. The second was to expand zoning for apartments over commercial buildings. We talked about that at great length. We have some of that in Harwich Port and in Harwich Center, but we talked about why wouldn't we allow that anywhere where we have commercial buildings. The third was the Vail, Colorado deed restriction. And this is a restriction they do in Vail, that the deed is restricted, that you have to be, theirs is that you have to work in town or be a retiree living in town. You know, ours might be different. It might be people that live in town. But the advantage of that is it gets more housing in the hands of people that are trying to work and live here. The fourth is I guess it's a mass. Is it a mass bylaw, Joe, or a mass, the 40Y? I don't know what you call that.
Mass General Laws under the Zoning Act.
Okay.
They've added, like 40B, Chapter 40Y, which is known as the Starter Home zoning bylaw.
Right.
Starting Home District, sorry.
I had heard about this at a zoning meeting in the late fall. It basically would allow us to put 4 units on an acre in an area that we designate for that. That doesn't mean we're doing that all over town. It means we would identify an area and that would be permissible. There's an incentive for the first one of these districts that we create, and I'm not sure that we would create more than one, we'd get $3,000 per starter home from the state. That's not big money, but it's a little bit of incentive to do it. Now, none of these are givens. These are just the 5 that we agreed we would pursue further. The last one I wrote down is site coverage with less impervious material. Right now, pavement counts the same as gravel or stone, even though gravel and stone is pervious. So this was a suggestion of Brian Sullivan, that if we change that, it would allow for more building. So those are the 5 that we will probably pursue further, but just wanted to give you that summary. Anything you guys want to add or subtract from my list?
No.
Michael?
No, great summary. Just a thank you again for putting that together, having that conversation. I believe it was about an hour and a half. We had several people in the audience, so it was not a hidden meeting as outlined by some. Most towns around us have working group sessions, and it doesn't seem to be a thing. Town of Brewster actually has a working retreat. So I found that to be very helpful, because we could have a very candid hour-and-a-half long conversation, and I could not imagine trying to do that in this room and get anything else done.
Right.
So deciding on that, focusing on that, and then bringing it back to the public as topics makes a ton of sense to me.
Great, thank you. I've been asked for another working session on a very specific topic for, give me the date again, Joe,
July 31st
July 31st.
for your committee discussion?
For the
Yep.
committee discussion. Emily and Joe have been working on some things related to our conversation 2 working sessions ago about the roles of TA, Select Board, and committees, and we've had some concerns about committees out of their lane. There's been concerns about us being out of our lane. So if you're all willing to do another working session next week, my further proposal is that we wouldn't do any in August. I think it's time to have a couple of Mondays off, bankers' holidays. So is everyone available for next week?
I will have to let you know.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, you better check with Julie. She might have a vacation.
She could be on, I think she already went.
That's great, and I'm fine with that topic. I do think that it's time that we have one specific to wastewater, with a very broad group of topics on that, including residents, and how the Board of Health's going to determine hardships. There's a lot of topics on that I'll send you, but I do think it's time to have an in-depth conversation about our next steps besides what we're going to hear tonight on the more global next steps.
I agree, and the other one that I was going to propose for next is the Monomoy formula, because if we're going to have any hope at changing that, that needs to start earlier rather than later. So we'll make wastewater and Monomoy the next 2 up.
Thank you.
We're talking about having a working session next week, and the topic is committees. Emily and Joe have been working on this, and looking forward to what they have to present. So that's the, I lost my place here. Okay. C, does somebody want to make a motion, and then we can discuss?
Sure. I move that we vote to waive the town's right of first refusal for the sale of 17 Woody Glen Road, formerly known as 140 Oak Street.
Have a second?
Did you say discussion? 'Cause-
I need a second to at
Yeah,
least get-
I'll second to
Move to
talk
vote.
about it. I don't want to do, yeah.
Second. Michael?
Yeah, I don't think we should take an action on this tonight. There's information that we're not being provided. So under the laws on 61A, this land has been held in agricultural with a reduced taxes. The town has a right not to approve this, and has a right to at least have the discussion on getting reimbursed for the taxes for a certain amount a year that were not paid on this property. And I don't think that there's enough information in this packet for us to make a decision and have that conversation, and for the public to be able to weigh in on what they want. And further, I would say that the dates that we're getting these, this letter came in from the attorney on July 11th. But they signed the P&S June 21st. But there's really not enough time for us to look at this and have a conversation that would reflect what this actually means with the information that we have.
Anybody else? Julie?
I agree wholeheartedly. There's not enough information for us to have this
Do
discussion.
you want to withdraw your motion and second?
We can just vote no.
Oh, we can vote no.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? Joe?
If the board's not inclined to take action, I would not recommend you defeat the motion. I recommend that you table the matter until your August 7th meeting. There is a time frame element, and it's either 90 or 120 days. So we're within it. However, if you defeated the motion tonight, it could cloud the matter that waiving the right of first refusal to deny the waiver could be inferred as you're invoking.
Okay, so you would suggest that we,
Motion to table until August 7th.
okay.
And just
Julie?
to clarify, that's what I was asking in the beginning. Discussion I was willing to have. I wasn't saying I was seconding a motion to approve that. I was just willing to discuss it.
You need to withdraw your motion and second, and we need to start over, correct?
Was the motion seconded?
Yes.
I
Yes,
You
Julie
did, okay,
seconded,
but,
thinking
okay,
it was
understood.
discussion
So
only.
I move to withdraw my,
Second first.
Yeah, I'll withdraw my second, then you can.
and now
so
I will
withdraw.
withdraw my motion.
Okay,
Joe, did you get any, sorry, Mary.
go ahead.
Through you. Did you get any further information on this? I know I called you and asked some questions. Would you just soon wait until the 5th for that,
The 7th?
the 7th?
I think it may be prudent if, so you have one affirmative act, to waive or invoke your right of first refusal. Invoking it has time-sensitive implications that staff has not yet analyzed. To waive it ends that process for you folks, and it goes back to the private parties. However, earlier I was asked by Member McCaskill about some tax implications, so I did share information that I got late this afternoon from our assessor. And if I could, to read from a portion of that, she has indicated that because the property in question is being removed from the chapter lands exemption, meaning chapter 61A, the town will be assessing for, quote, rollback taxes for that portion. So even though the sale may go forward, or when the sale goes forward because the town's not invoking, there would be that rollback action taken. So the town would be recouping some tax money that would not otherwise be owed.
Okay. So we now need a motion to table till August 7th?
Time certain, yeah.
Was that a motion, Don?
Just make that motion?
I guess so.
Second
I make a motion that we table this to a time certain being August 7th, 2023.
Second.
No sooner than 6
Okay.
PM.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Joe?
Thank you.
Finally, D, update on watershed permit regulations by GHD and wastewater superintendent.
I don't believe that. There's a list there too.
Oh, perfect.
How you doing? Dan Pelletier, Water Wastewater Superintendent. With me tonight is Anastasia Rudenko from GHD and Russ Kleekamp as well.
So I'm Anastasia Rudenko. I'm the project manager working on the CWMP update, and we wanted to initiate the discussion today about 2 new regulatory changes in Mass DEP and how they'll be integrated into the CWMP update project. So the 2 regulatory changes are revisions to Title V and new watershed permit regulations, both of which were promulgated on July 7, 2023. Once those regulations were promulgated, it designated the 5 coastal watershed areas in Harwich as nitrogen-sensitive areas. And the regulations outline two pathways. It starts a 2-year notice of intent and application period where the town makes the decision to either start upgrading all of the existing septic systems within a nitrogen-sensitive area to best available nitrogen-reducing technology within 5 years, or to enter to implement a 20-year watershed permit for each watershed designated as a nitrogen-sensitive area. And under that permit, you need to meet 75% of the nitrogen load reductions in each watershed within the first 20-year permit. And there is an exemption for complex projects, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So we just wanted to highlight a couple of key phrases from the watershed regulations. One is that the permit, if the town does decide to enter into the watershed permits, is based on what's known as a watershed management plan. And the project that we're working on is meant to serve as that plan. So it's setting up the town for the foundation of the watershed permit. It switched. And then the second is the discussion of the 20-year permit cycle. And the regulations outline that at least 75% of the necessary nitrogen load reduction in each watershed is to be achieved within that first permit cycle. And then the intent is to renew the permit and to pick up the additional 25%. But I do have a section of the regulation highlighted that talks about an alternate schedule that can be developed based on watershed-specific issues, such as number and complexity of watersheds, the 5 watersheds within Harwich, total nitrogen load to be reduced, and a logistical and financial planning for wastewater infrastructure complexity. So we wanted to show how the CWMP schedule fits within this proposed framework, and then to initiate the discussion of potential phasing options that could be worked into the CWMP plan update. So this is an outline of the regulatory milestones that are in the regulations. So as I mentioned, the regulations were promulgated in July 2023. That starts the clock with the watersheds being designated as nitrogen-sensitive areas. And it starts the clock on a notice of intent or application period, which goes 2 years. So that would end in July 2025. And then the watershed permit would have 5-year milestones, where at every 5 years, you would look at how the program is being implemented and make adjustments as necessary to meet your nitrogen management goals. So under this timeline, the watershed permit would be renewed in 2045. And I just wanted to show that against the original CWMP implementation schedule, which had originally started in 2013 and was scheduled to go through 2052. So it's just a little bit longer than that first watershed permit cycle.
If I can just highlight that, just I guess reiterate. So I know, I personally had a pretty decent knee-jerk reaction. I think a lot of us did when we caught ear that they were condensing our 40-year plan to a 20-year plan. But we've already completed 2 phases. We're working on our 3rd. And really when you tease that all out, if you look at the timeline on the bar above, that bottom bracket really makes up that 40-year timeline. So we're talking about a delta of 7 years. And I think that, as Anastasia said, there's provisions in the regulations due to complexity, number, quantity of watersheds, financial plan. I would argue that Harwich has the, perfect case to make for extending that. So I don't believe at this stage that we're in such a dire position as we had anticipated being in, as we've been leading up to this. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Can I ask something through you, Madam Chair, before we move on? But there were 2 moving parts. It was the compression of the timeline and the expansion of the population, the targets. So what's happening with the second thing? Because the first one is only part of the problem. Now you're also talking about a larger universe.
So when you say targets, you're talking TMDLs or
Actually,
year targets?
how many units of housing that we had actually anticipated sewering under the old plan compared to what their new regulation is a moving part also.
I think, I guess the way I've kind of bundled it up is if we take our old, not the old, the original phasing plan, there's a map that I send out pretty regularly that details our 8 phases. What I would say is that that map of our 8 phases geographically still represents what we need to sewer to remove sufficient nitrogen to restore our harbors and embayments.
We wouldn't be adding more houses or residences, whatever you want to call them.
Right. I would say we're probably still at, barring any changes born out of the LCP, zoning changes, things of that nature, 40Bs, I would say we're still comparable in numbers. And I think what's important to point out is that our 40-year plan had assumed removing 100% of the nitrogen that we were required to remove. And we're now only really required to remove 75% of that in 20 years. So we are anticipating that we'll have a second watershed permit that we renew after this one, which will seek to remove the remaining 25% and adjust for any future growth.
Okay, thanks.
And that's part of the purpose of the 5-year milestones, is we make initial assumptions looking at a 20-year planning period, and at those 5-year milestones, you look back, you see, have you seen that growth? Do you anticipate more growth? And do you have to adjust your strategy in order to meet the TMDLs?
Michael?
So if I'm hearing it correctly, we're really only falling down by 7 years. But what's the cost of removal of 75% versus the cost of removal at 100% with that extra 7 years? How much more borrowing are we sticking, front-loading to our residents? Because DEP's decision, I won't go into depth about my thoughts on it. But,
Thank you.
Unfunded mandates are really I'm not a fan of. Most importantly to me, because we all know we have to do this. We all know we have to work in conjunction with what we're doing here, we're adding fresh water and being proactive. So how much borrowing am I looking at with these 5-year milestones? We're going to get to that, right? We don't have that yet.
Not today.
So, yes, so that is something that is actively being pursued as part of this project, is to look at the financing, and as Dan said, that may be the basis of doing an alternate schedule.
Okay, and that would be renewing a permit later or doing an alternate, pushing things out.
It would likely be a different percentage that you're trying to meet within that 20-year permit. So
Okay.
I'd envision the 20-year permit stays the same, but you have flexibility once you bring the economics into the discussion.
The town of Harwich has been very supportive of our program, and we're probably close to $100 million approved and $35 million or so in work done. We're very proactive. So at some point, if this doesn't make sense, we're probably going to have to join some other towns in telling DEP that what they're trying to push down our throat doesn't work without money from them. And that's a conversation, maybe through the town administrator to the other managers, is what are the other towns going to do? Not everybody's in as good a shape as us. But I really need to see, and I know we're not there yet, the money involved in this timeline.
And that will be looked at as part of this project.
Julie?
But a follow-up to Michael's point also is that I think it's important, so it's hard enough for us to be taking all this information in to reassess it. And we all know that it's been a difficult process in getting the public to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it. Now, we have people talking to us about, wait a minute, I'm gonna have to put in an IA system, and what is that? What are you talking about? So if we're moving to our 20-year, we're gonna accept it, to Michael's point, we fought this hard because it's really ridiculous, and they were only here telling us that IA systems don't even remove enough nitrogen. Well, now, here we are, being shoved down our throats to 20 years, and I know you're saying we're only losing 7, so not only is there the financing, but then we have to make sure that people understand, now we got another 7 years, now we have to, fund this more, but also that they don't have to, if we meet this, do the IAs, because that's out there percolating right now, and no pun intended, but.
Well, to that end, and I don't know if it's appropriate tonight to ask for the board's vote on this, but for the select board to take action and commit to, we are pursuing watershed permits for our 5 watersheds. I get asked the same question, and I can say, we have a CWMP. I intending on pursuing watershed permits, but I think memorializing that in a vote would give confidence to the public that says, yeah, we're going down the path of sewering. We can relieve ourselves of worrying about IA.
Thank you.
If I can just add.
Yes.
Real quick, Russ Kleekamp, engineer with GHD. Regarding the comments that the residents have with IAs and uncertainty, things like that, I know previously in the meeting we talked about a potential workshop coming up for wastewater, so let's talk about how we can educate, and then always, what I always suggest with all the towns is that if there's ever questions at any time, there's a GHD email where you can log your questions, send them in, even if it's a question we've answered 100 times. We get it. People are not, this is brand new to some people every time they see it. So rather than the board getting all sorts of questions, would offer that any time a question comes in writing, to forward it to, whether you forward it to Dan and he sends it to the appropriate GHD contact. But we do like to keep a record of all the public interaction, because it goes a very long way when we have these workshops and say, we had a meeting at the start of the CWMP, another follow-up one, virtual one, in person. You get it, these are very complex, difficult projects, and we want to be available to answer these and make sure that the right information is getting out there as well.
Mayor, can I just follow?
Julie, yeah.
So just to follow up on, thank you, but I think that another important place to put that is on a website under the wastewater stuff, and like sort of a new, news flash kind of thing, so we can tell the public, go online, look at the wastewater page, you're gonna see, this information. It'll be easy to find so they can read it, because that'll even reduce the amount of emails you get if they understand. Otherwise, they can follow up with the link.
Yep, and we can even put, for example, frequently asked questions, and maybe their question has already been
Right.
answered.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So one concept that we wanted to introduce tonight is developing a potential rephasing strategy. So we took an initial approach and we wanted to open it up for comments. So the first is to look at projects outside of nitrogen-sensitive areas, which is the Great Sand Lakes project that's projected to go forward 2025 to 2030. And then we looked at what may fall within a first permit cycle. We have a conceptual map for discussion, which includes Route 28. So that's sewering that would provide an artery through the Herring River watershed, Allen Harbor watershed, Witchmere Harbor, and Sequatucket. So you're touching all of the remaining watersheds besides Pleasant Bay, which has already had the sewering completed. And then potentially going up Sisson Road, which would bring in the economic development of Harwich Center, and then also serve as a potential connection point to Dennis for treatments. Once the watershed permit cycle is renewed, the next phasing would be to complete sewering in Herringbrook, Allen Harbor, Witchmere Harbor to meet the TMDL goals. And then for Sequatucket Harbor, the Cold Brook Restoration Project is being initiated. So putting the majority of the sewering in the second permit phase would allow data to be gathered to see how that watershed is responding to the restoration project, and to see if we can scale back on the sewering in that based on the restoration project results. And all of that is summarized in a bigger, so the dark blue in this conceptual discussion would represent the first phase or the first watershed permit, and then the light blue would be the second watershed permit. And as we work through the financials, we would continue to adjust the potential phasing cycles based on developing a fiscally sustainable plan.
So just to expand on the map, one of the primary things, as Anastasia and I were talking about this, was, if we go with the first watershed permit and front load and do Herring River and Route 28, well, we're missing economic opportunity in Harwich Center around here. So we're not pinning Harwich Center business against Harwich Port businesses. The concept was try and include a backbone to get both of those commercial areas. I'm thinking, as we discussed, the permit, we're supposed to be getting 75%. I would argue that due to our complexity and quantity of watersheds, we could seek to reduce that. So I think what we've been bouncing around is trying to accomplish about 50% in Herring River, 75 in Allen, 75 in Witchmere, and 50% in Sequatucket. And then would pick up the remaining 50% in Herring River, 25 in the others, and 50 in Sequatucket on the second permit.
I think you had a question before you go further.
Yeah.
Michael?
The only thing I'm concerned about is having the conversation about economic development in Harwich Center, as I see no real estate for any economic development whatsoever.
Apologies, shouldn't have used the term economic development, but instead to support the businesses who I do know are looking for sewer.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
not
because their zoning
necessarily.
is their zoning is
Right.
their zoning, and I don't see any size of anything changing there without zoning changes. And
I
that's a
appreciate the
whole nother
clarification.
40-year plan. And if we're to the point where we want to talk about this, I for one think we have no option but to get watershed permits.
Right.
And take this burden off of putting IAs in people's yards that nobody's proven to us yet that they even work. And I'd hate to go that route to find out 10 years from now, well, sorry, it didn't work, you got a sewer anyway. So if we're
Right.
gonna do it, we may as well do it. So if it's by way of vote tonight or coming back, I would certainly vote to support watershed permits and think we'd be foolish to go any other way.
Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, and thank you all for being here. My only question is there a downside to us applying for watershed permits? I mean, I'm certainly with Mr. McCaskill here, but I'd like to know the other side of the pancake.
I don't
Say it.
have a good opposing
Great.
reason that we shouldn't do it.
That's
I mean,
enough.
I think this is the most economical way to mitigate the impacts of nitrogen.
Thank you.
Perhaps it's the lesser of two evils.
Understood.
We're given two options, and
Yep, sure.
What do you need from us tonight, Dan?
Well, I think really we wanted to update you, obviously now that the regulations have been adopted, but also kind of propose what we've identified is to be included in Watershed Permit 1, the areas we're proposing to do in Watershed Permit 2, and then from there, we'll go and dice this up into a million construction contracts and try to parse it out into costs so that we can go and revisit it again.
And I'd add that this isn't the first and last time you'll see this before the watershed permit gets submitted. So if we get a general direction tonight, we're happy to go in that direction, and then when we feel appropriate, present to the board with updates that require the board's decision-making at that time.
Well, I'm certainly with the two gentlemen to my right, and I assume Julie and Don as well.
Yeah.
So I think you've got the five of us.
Great.
Just to add too, that this is nitrogen right now, and I've said it from the beginning. Sooner or later, we're not gonna be talking about nitrogen. There's a lot of other things that will require sewer system to clean them. So this makes most sense. Joe, question to Joe through you if I can.
Go ahead.
At some point, I would imagine the Managers Association is gonna have a discussion about DEP's unfunded mandate and what it means to each town, and how collectively we can work together if we have to, i.e. fight DEP. But for now, this looks great, but as we present to our taxpayers and the numbers drastically change, it might not look great, and we might need that extra 7 years.
Joe?
Managers and administrators, as you imagine, were always ahead of the curve. We had a meeting here in Harwich that, when it was my turn to host, and, excuse me, was a hybrid. There were 8 managers present and 3 remote, and the only thing we agreed upon is that there was no agreement or consensus on the Cape. Some of my colleagues in the Upper Cape, their elected bodies favor it because it's the impetus by which they can start sewering. So for towns like Harwich that has already undertaken this, it's been very thoughtful, and years, it's much more egregious. Yarmouth and Dennis, to no surprise, generally agree with that sentiment. What I would offer is to turn it back to you folks. You folks are members of the Cape and Islands Municipal Leadership Association, so we've already vetted it at the managers administrators level. For me, and I have no doubt we're going to hear a lot of this next week at One Cape and Wauquasit, where the CIMLA is really where that should happen again, because we managers and administrators try to work collaboratively, but we take our guidance from the elected officials. And we talk about it every month, and there remains no cohesive argument one way or the other, despite the fact that I will put it out there that I was eminently disappointed in what turned out for me to be a scam, and I'll say it that way, and I know it's pejorative. When I read the FAQ that was released by DEP, and the second FAQ is, so why did we decide to focus only on Cape Cod? there was no answer in the FAQ there. So clearly that was the intent from day one. They pitted the Cape against other South Coastal communities, and in the end, it was really just a focus on us. But there is no sense of consensus, and I think generally speaking, what you'll find is different viewpoints between upper, middle, lower, and outer Cape, rather than just the consensus on DEP. So I would urge you folks as part of that leadership group to have those conversations as well.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I'd ask the same of you. I'm good.
No, I think we're clearly in your court. I think the areas you picked make sense. I certainly am not going to debate with the expertise the three of you and the rest of your team have where we should go. Look forward to hearing from you with further updates.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Sorry it took so long to go so fast.
I was just gonna say, there's gonna be a speaker at One Cape talking about freshwater farming.
I like that.
You can go to George's now. Get a pizza.
No parking.
But there's no place to park. Jeff, could I?
Yeah.
What's that?
As long as you can produce land, we're all set.
I move to approve and authorize the chair to sign a permit easement totaling 760 square feet from Mass DOT at Saquatucket Harbor for the sidewalk installation on Route 28.
Second.
Any discussion? Michael?
I asked when I walked in tonight of the town administrator where the map was to show what this looks like, and whether or not we had reached out to the property owners and how much, we've all talked about the sidewalk, we all agree that we need a sidewalk, but this doesn't tell me anything at all, except for some people that I could look up and ask how many bushes of theirs we're gonna have to move. Shouldn't we be looking at a conceptual drawing of what this is before we make a motion and a vote to take easements? And look at if there's any alternatives to some of this?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Do we have anything, Joe?
I would not object to any motion to table this until August 7th.
Okay,
I feel like we gotta get in front
Oh, I
of
gotta
this.
withdraw my
yeah,
second.
Yeah, and I move to withdraw my motion.
How much time do
Okay.
you need?
Say again?
How much time do you need for the table?
I suggest August 7th. I think that will be sufficient.
Same motion as before. I move that we table this to a time certain, August 7th, no sooner than 6 PM.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, Joe.
Thank you.
I move that we review and take action on general law, Chapter 268A, Section 19B3, disclosure of non-elected municipal employee of financial interest. Emily Brody, Planning Board.
And did the motion include to approve
Approve of a request.
the request?
It did.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair, just if you
Yes.
look on page 2, I think what I took from that motion is that you would support the determination that as the appointing official, the board deems that the financial interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity, and therefore you would acknowledge that, which would allow the member to continue on in that matter.
Okay, does that need to be part of Jeff's motion?
Not if that's how everybody took it.
Yes, that's how we
In
took
the
it.
end, the chair is signing
We
to
were
that.
approving the request on the form.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yes, as presented on the form.
okay. Did we vote on that? We did,
yet.
right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0, Joe.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible vote on installing netting at a private residence that abuts Cranberry Valley Golf Course, per resident request. Who would like to start this?
I will.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Having had 4 years' worth of conversations on this very topic and these very golf balls, we have a very upset resident taxpayer who has sent me 1 million pictures and has articulated where they are landing We have had conversations with the golf superintendent in the past, golf maintenance director in the past. We, the town, conceded to putting up a chain link fence around the property to stop people from going into his yard to collect said golf balls. So we solved one problem. He is now claiming that he is building a garage on the side of his house and sending me photos of golf balls inside the foundation hole and his outdoor shower against the side of his truck and next to his trailer. I did speak to, we all have a legal opinion that we were sent, and I believe that articulated that there's not a lot of liability to the town, but they can't say where a judge would go. The ask ultimately with all these words is that we install a net. So there's some evergreens there, there's a fence, but it's clearly not stopping the golf balls. So basic conversation led to a net to stop the golf balls from going into his yard, would cost the town probably around $1,000. I did take the time to speak to his neighbor because he told me that his neighbor gets them in his pool and in his yard as well. The neighbor does not get rained on with golf balls, but certainly gets some golf balls in his yard. He happens to be a member of Cranberry Valley and loves it and is not complaining about it. But the fellow that is complaining about it is tired of the golf balls landing in his yard. He's requesting that we put up a net to stop it. I could go on for this, but given the hour, I would share all the photos with you, but I'm not gonna.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll go, having read all of this. My understanding is the town put up a fence, and we were gracious enough to put it in our land. So there was space between the fence and his property, and we put trees or shrubbery in there. And this gentleman chose to remove, without permission, the trees and shrubbery. So he has, in my eyes, made his problem worse. Part of the solution we gave him, he undid.
If I may, the
Yep.
only correction I would have is that my last viewing of it, that those Leland cypresses have not been removed. The only trees that were removed were way before the fence, and they were pine trees so that he could get a better view of the golf course.
Well, I say that makes no sense. If you want a better view of the golf course, you're gonna get some golf balls. And I'm not a golfer, but that's just my simple view. Anyone else want to jump into the greens?
I don't think there's a big problem with spending $1,000 to put a net up. I really don't.
What's that?
I don't think there's a real problem with spending $1,000 to put a net up. I mean, after that, then we're done. But failing that, I guess we got to give lessons to people so that they don't slice and hook when they're playing golf. But this is happening. I mean, he has some reasonable right to, quiet enjoyment of his property.
The
Michael?
only other recommendation, Jeff, tell me the name of the Professional Golf Association.
I'm sorry?
Tell me the name of the Professional Golf Association that might have somebody they could send down to.
So, yeah, Mass Golf Association, I could certainly reach out to a colleague of mine who does this kind of thing. I can add that by putting a net up, if I may, Madam Chair.
You may.
By putting a net up, you're then agreeing that there's an issue,
Right.
right? So I've had a little bit of, unfortunately, some history with this kind of thing at another golf course. You're agreeing there's an issue, and then that could have other abutters then wanting fences, trees, nets, so forth and so on. I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, I'm just telling you what I've seen happen in the past.
You should probably be really happy that I don't golf and that
Ju-
I'm not.
Julie?
I think that we've done a lot, and I think Jeff raises a good point. And our legal opinion says our liability. To me, it's not necessarily about $1,000, it's about the message.
Joe, would you like to comment on this one?
No.
Fair enough,
No,
I
no,
asked.
I would not like to comment, but I can comment if needed. I just assume we move on with the agenda.
Okay.
Here we go.
Michael?
If I may. What we've done for him clearly hasn't worked, and precedence, as we discussed earlier, certainly means a lot to me. We do not have to admit any wrongdoing whatsoever in the agreement that we make to put a net up on his property. And the net for us could be as simple as saying that you can't text Michael McCaskill pictures of golf balls anymore. So for a simple $1,000 or a simple vote of this board to have somebody from one of these professional golf organizations come down and look at it, because nowhere in the legal opinion did it say that we were going to win. And $1,000, as we all learned tonight, doesn't go very far in a lawsuit. And so far, he has not been afraid to speak to and have a lawyer send us letters. So for the simple act of having somebody come down and look at it, and then if we do install a net, it does not say that we're saying there's a problem, other than he hates golf balls. So for me, it seems like $1,000 makes something go away. And he's got a reasonable complaint, because I know you can't build next to an airport and then hate airplanes. I get it. But if my neighbor was chipping golf balls into my yard every day, then I would have a problem with my neighbor, and he'd be shooting them from his own property. But a net would go a long way and cost us $1,000. Having somebody from one of these organizations come down and look at it with the golf superintendent probably will cost us nothing.
Oh, heck, I move that we ask, request, have a professional come and review the situation, report back to us, or we'll be here until midnight.
Second.
Discussion, and I'm going to call Joe first, because he had his hand up.
I don't know if I'm working off of the same copy of the agenda. All right, so I am. Discussion on a butter complaint regarding Cranberry Valley Golf Course. I would be concerned about specificity of notice. Again, I did not want to comment, but there are a number of concerns that I have on behalf of staff regarding this entire matter, which is why I took the administrative step of seeking council's opinion when the letter came to the town threatening action. I would urge the board not to take any action tonight. And if you are inclined to take action, administration, staff, and legal can probably have a stronger response. But I would urge that the board do nothing at this point.
Can you tell us why?
I don't agree with some of the suggestions that were made in conversation with staff that is fully aware of the issue at the golf course. This is an issue that I've been familiar with since the first day I started here. And I am always concerned about liability. If it's the board's intent for us to have professional input outside of staff, I think that should go through the administrator and not from board members. Having said that, both of our department heads at that location are eminently qualified and rely upon USGA guidance and input, but not for an abutter argument.
Okay.
I would agree, 100%.
That we have the talent right there at our golf course.
I would agree 100% that the people that we have working at our golf course know exactly what they're talking about.
And they are not suggesting this. Michael?
Before we go anywhere, first and foremost, I know we have great professionals at the golf course. It's been going on for 4 years plus. He's asking, and so did his neighbor, asked for somebody from the outside for another opinion. And with all due respect to the town administrator, and thank you for trying to cover me legally, even though I'm not worried about it, he sent a request to the Board of Selectmen, not the town administrator, which why I asked for this to get back on the agenda is because the town administrator didn't want it back on the agenda for the reasons as he just outlined. It's not his call, it's our call. We take a vote on it. If we lose, we lose. It's the majority of the board. We have a resident that has been complaining about an issue for 4 years plus, and the legal opinion does not say we'll win. And Mary, I pointed to the Falmouth case where they were awarded over $3 million. It's been appealed.
Right.
Who knows where it sits in appeal, and who knows what an appeals judge will do.
Well, they lost it on appeal,
So it went back to appeal, so the appeal's being
so
appealed.
there's another appeal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in the end, this is our decision, and this is a request put on the agenda by me from a resident that has been adamant about this, and there's no room in this conversation for anyone to say that we don't have qualified staff at the golf course, and what they say goes. The request came to us, and I know we have qualified staff at the golf course.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't think I want to spend money nor take a shot at liability. Don?
I might point out that this is not a final action. I'm just requesting that we have a separate set of eyes give us a recommendation so that we can take an action on it, because we're not taking an action. We're not really directly addressing this at all. We're just requesting to have somebody else look at it.
Jeff?
Well, under the new information that you just gave, that he's actually asked for an outside person to come in, I didn't understand that.
His neighbor did,
Oh, his neighbor did.
whom he asked to call me, because he's getting golf balls in his pool as
Okay.
well.
I do want to state for the record, the person I'm going to call, I'm not so sure that this person is going to come out and take a look. But I will be happy if it's the board's pleasure to make a phone call to a contact of mine and inquire, if that's the move we want to make tonight.
If that doesn't work, the USGA, thanks Joe for mentioning, the USGA is the organization that was mentioned to me that has somebody that will come out and take a look at the position of the tee box.
It's the same guy.
Okay.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
There was a motion.
There was?
Yeah, to get
You,
some,
you moved that we spend the $1,000 on net.
no.
No,
No,
no, I said that we should request a second set of eyes.
okay, and we've had discussions, we had a first and a second. So the motion is to get someone from, what's the name of the group?
USGA.
USGA,
Association.
Mass Golf Association, to come out and review the situation
Report back to us.
and report back to us. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? I'm opposed. 4-1, Joe.
Thank you, Mary.
Yep. Okay, where are we?
I move that we vote to approve the following special permits. Harwich Chamber of Commerce event permit for a motorcycle ride Sunday, September 10, 2023. Starting at 9 a.m. at Falmouth High School, 874 Gifford Street, Falmouth, and ending at 11 a.m. at Cape Cod Regional Technical High School at 351 Pleasant Lake Ave. I also move that we approve Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance one-day all alcohol and one-day entertainment permit. Saturday, August 15th, 2023, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. at 100 Oak Street, recorded or live music outside.
And you meant August 5th, correct?
Is that what I not said? Yeah, August 5th.
That's what you intended.
I'm sorry, August 5th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What?
I am an aye, but I'm not sure if either of the ladies in the back who are doing these events wanted to say anything
Oh,
about them. But
sorry.
But I am an aye as well.
Okay.
Oh, Cindy's right on it.
You gonna be riding one of the hogs?
Only you will be able to see if you'd like, if you come to the event. No, seriously, it's been a long night. I just wanted to thank you all for letting us go forward with both of these great events. The Roar event is a motorcycle ride that it is the 6th year, and it is a ride for opioid addiction awareness recovery. And so after long conversations with the gentleman that runs it, Jamie Pina, which many of you may know, the family, big connections in town, as well as with Cape Cod Regional Tech. We felt that it would be a great location for the ride. And then I had a lot more to say, but it's too darn long, and it's too late. And you're welcome, Mr. Waystack. The Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance. This is an event that's been happening, how many years, Jen? 22, in Chatham. And we're super, super, super excited to be bringing it to Harwich. Mainsail Events has been the planner for many years, and this is an event that showcases and celebrates our fishing community. So we're excited to have it, and thank you all for the support.
Welcome. Thank you, Cindy. Yes, Michael.
And briefly would add, echo the excitement on having the Commercial Fishing Alliance in Harwich. Amazing.
Great. Thank you. All right. We had the motion, and all in favor? Did we get that far? We did.
Yeah.
All right, we're done. Old business, you're up, Joe.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, you should have in front of you an 11 by 17 document, which is the update on procurements from the all projects list, as well as a memo that I provided earlier today that I will rely upon for any questions, but we've got our procurement RFP, IFP guru here present as well. I just open it up to the board for any questions, comments, or anything you'd like me to dive into.
Anyone want to start? Michael, you don't have your hand up, but I'm sure.
Figured I'd give somebody else a shot. Thank you, Joe and Megan, for this. Very, very helpful. I'm going to go back to it, and I'm going to keep it very brief, because I know we're going to have this every 2 weeks, so I'll expand on it in 2 weeks when we bring it back. I think that was the original thought, was every couple
I
weeks.
thought we said once a month.
Okay, once a month, so I'll wait a month.
Patiently.
I can't help but notice and point out 2013, 2014, 2016, 2018, and 2019. And if I didn't mention it, up the list is 2017. So a lot of very old projects that were voted at an amount at town meeting. And we know from some of the procurements we've been working on that are fresh, that if we wait a year or 2 years, the price is quite different than what was appropriated at town meeting. Given that these projects seemingly are not that important because they haven't been initiated yet, why wouldn't we encourage or straight out say if we don't want it, to reapply for it as a capital request? How long do we leave these things on there to go through the whole procurement process to get back bids on it, to then have to go back to town meeting and get another appropriation to actually finish it? Now, given most of these are lower dollar amounts, that might not be the case. But Joe, I'd like to hear your thoughts and any conversation that you've had with these department heads on these old procurements that haven't been initiated as to why. And then if I can expand, DPW has 22 open procurements that haven't been initiated yet. Do we need to have another procurement person doing procurement over there? Or do these, because you obviously can't all do it all. Or when are we gonna get these things started? Because we're about to go through another round of capital requests, and we're gonna add to this list.
So before I turn it over to our RFP guru, who is getting quite a bit done with our departments, and I can go, as was suggested earlier, I can parse some of the numbers. But specifically, looking at the 2013 Article 31 Library Building Maintenance, when we created the descriptor of awaiting initiation, that is for the remaining funds. Any of the articles that are greater than, or that are older than 2019, as part of my budget process with the last cycle, I reached out and said, why wouldn't we take these funds back? Why wouldn't we transfer them out? And the response was, because they're leftover money that they still intend using. So that's why it's here now, but to your point, that doesn't mean between now and the next update, we don't say, you know, $4,000 left over, this is your last chance to spend it, get it done. Otherwise, we would rely upon that as either funding for motions or otherwise.
So, well, let me try a clarifying question on that, Joe. So these ones that are old, although it says awaiting initiation, it's awaiting initiation for the last part of spending. It's not that nothing has been done.
Correct, and it may be that some of what was done precedes me and/or Megan, so that's why they've been around for a while, but knowing that we are aware of those fundings, they're not zero, that's why they make it to the list.
Okay, Michael?
Can we add a column to this and maybe email it to the board so we can digest it before the next 30 days to see what's actually leftover money versus an article? And I'm not sure that it's okay with the taxpayers for all of these to be kept as savings accounts for something that comes up that they can spend this money on. If the project was done and we have leftover money, in my mind, the money should be turned back over to the town and we should come up with a new item.
If I may, Madam Chair, through you.
Yes, you may.
I don't disagree with any of that. What we've heard from the project owners is the project and the original intent that was voted is not completed yet. We're not looking, we administration are not looking for them to use that for some other purpose. The message that I've been giving out to department heads is if that is an overage and you're done, it's going back to be used, either it goes to free cash, or one of the ways I think we can clean it up that Carol Capola and I, former finance director, used to do, is have that as a funding motion. So that's what's meant by awaiting initiation. I don't want the residents and taxpayers of our town to think that we in administration view that as a savings account, and I also want to explain what you see in the memorandum. While this procurement list has 77 procurement projects on it, we now know that it's really 76, one was withdrawn, and I've explained that it's related to recreation and CPC. While it is true that 52 of 76 are awaiting initiation, what we're also saying is that since administration has been tracking this since town meeting, we've gotten all of those other projects. To have 12 projects in the RFP process is no small task. As you heard me say earlier tonight, RFP or IFP can generally take upwards of 6 to 8 weeks just to get the document on the marketplace. So I would anticipate that I could imagine at least half of those 12 going now to the either contract awarded, final step, or complete. So anything that is IFB down to complete is on the way to being completed, sooner rather than later. And by that I mean within this fiscal quarter or the next fiscal quarter. So then we look at square one. Those are ones that we tried that RFP effort, yielded nothing, we have to start over. So with 52 remaining, that is 52 that we can clean up between now and, say, the end of the calendar year for that very reason. We're trying to get these over and done with because of the backlog, because we know that the business of government doesn't end, and we're going to be building for fiscal year '24. So I'm pleased, if I can say it that way, and I can say it that way because it's the result of the work of our assistant town administrator, which is the primary reason why I asked her to wait so long, so that she could at least get the accolades that she deserves. To have all of those be in that process, where really we're talking about 2 that we have to start over, the 52, the department heads know you need to get moving.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
And thank you, Megan. And thank you for staying.
Julie?
Can I just ask a couple questions on this? I understand what you just said, but I'm just wondering why with like Brooks, this isn't a lot of money, it's just $4,000, but battery carpet from 2014, it's just awaiting initiation. So,
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may.
answer to that. That is a very small amount of a larger beginning amount.
okay.
And they do plan on buying carpet tiles for the smaller offices.
Okay.
So it's a leftover amount. It was
It
much greater.
just stuck out to me.
Yep, and that's.
It does stick out.
Yeah, and the only other one I really had a question on, just based on our conversation tonight, was 2016 Route 39 Chatham Road project, 300,000.
I think that's an error. I think that meant to be 2023.
Okay, because I wouldn't have asked if it was 2023.
So I can explain that, because I did that. First, there was a reference in a previous version to 2016. And I think that's when the process that traffic talked about. So I didn't want to change that date for being accused of altering, but the credible point was the 300,000 that was added.
Yeah, okay.
So the year didn't change, the dollar amount has now been added.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Megan, while we have you in the hot seat, can you update us on 276 Queen Anne? Do we
Oh,
have
sure,
a do we have a URL?
The URL is the same for all procurements, so any procurements or sales or IFBs, RFPs, they're all the same URL. It's harwich-ma.gov, home page is procurement. So if you go onto our website, there's a tab that says RFPs, IFBs. If you click on that, there's a list of all of the open procurements that
Okay.
require an IFB or an RFP. And then you can click on each individual one. And it opens up a window that you have to put in your email address and click that you're not a robot. And then
Sometimes I am.
and that provides a list of anyone who has accessed that procurement. So if
Okay.
there's an addendum or something that needs to be emailed out, I'll have a list to be able to contact anyone who has downloaded the plans or the IFB.
Is 276 on that list
It is
now?
on that
It
list,
is,
yep.
okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
So the last stat I want to throw out there is 29% of the procurements that we're dealing with are in a state of near completion for the first fiscal quarter. Meaning, if we really thought about it and we broke it out as 100, you might imagine that we do 25 every quarter. So we're in the first month of the first quarter, when we really started the vast majority of these, and we're already at 29% trending towards completion.
That's great.
So I think that's a great number that I want to put out there, and I want to publicly thank in person Megan Eldridge, our Assistant Town Administrator, who is a force at procurement and keeping everybody in line, and thank the department heads for partnering with her. 'Cause
Yes.
without those two forces, it wouldn't get done.
Thank you, Megan. We absolutely appreciate this. And I just go back to a year ago or 2 years ago when I first sat here, and the list was a whole lot longer and a lot that were way older. So I know you've made tremendous inroads, so
We have.
thank you.
And to know that many of these procurements are 3 or 4 different procurements within one line item. To get it into a completion is 3 or 4 steps. So it's not just putting something.
It's not just one thing,
advertising. Yes,
yeah.
it's many steps in between.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Update on the progress of the intermunicipal agreement with Cape Cod Technical High School. Joe and Michael, this is yours. Who would like to start?
So before I defer to the project lead, we had, Town of Harwich, so Select Board Member McCaskill and I with Council Katie Klein, met in my office back in end of June with Bob Sanborn and Erin Orchid, Business Manager for Tech, and on the phone was Nancy Campany, the counterpart to Katie Klein from the Tech. So we covered a bit of helpful information. I know that Katie got a draft agreement to Mr. McCaskill and I. Mr. McCaskill had done some great work in reviewing it, and I would turn it to him because I think he had some updates that he was able to analyze. And my understanding is that with that information that's been provided back to our council, we're still waiting on the tech school. But I'd defer to Mr. McCaskill for any of his.
Given the hour, we have a finished draft. I will send you the finished draft tomorrow. Please don't discuss it with each other. make your comments, and then I'm going to ask Mary to put it on the agenda for our next meeting as a
Okay.
joint meeting with the Conservation Commission so that they can have their input. I have sent it to the Chair of Conservation, and I have sent it to Amy Usowski, Conservation Director, for their review anyway. So they're going to start to do a review of their own and come with questions, so hopefully that night we can approve it
That sounds great.
and be done with it. It's, they've asked Conservation Commission to set up a bog tour, property tour with Leo Kukunis, the current tenant. He has agreed. That is August 9th at 3:30. But he's going to meet them there and go through the bog. And I think we're there. The questions Joe spoke of, I got answered, and they got formulated into the draft. Tech school attorney said their clients agreed with the draft as of right now. So, fingers crossed, I think we're done.
Okay, that's great. Contracts.
Jeff?
Yes, sorry. I move that we grant the authority to file document to execute for the Phase 3 project, delegating town administrator to sign on behalf of the town for the Phase 3 project.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a little bit. I would just ask the town administrator to forward us those documents. He's representing us, we're allowing him to represent us. That does not mean I want to be in the dark on grant opportunities and the paperwork and where they get applied to, and contracts, obviously.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes.
Technically, the request of the water wastewater superintendent through the administrator to expedite, we discussed that, and that's exactly the process that we do, similar to any grants that I do or contracts.
Okay.
So we'll just incorporate that in the discussion items.
We had a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
I move to approve an intermunicipal agreement with Barnstable County for administering the Public Health Excellence for Shared Services Grant.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, Joe.
I move to approve the contract with Atlantic Recycling Equipment LLC for the purchase of 2 municipal solid waste trailers in the amount of $205,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Michael?
Signed by.
This still falls back, and I don't want to slow it down, but Kyle did a great job with the procurement on this and his vehicle replacement program. I think he puts a ton of thought into this. We're buying 2 more trailers. There's no mention in any of the documentation on what we're doing with the 2 that are starting to go bad and if they're worth any money. Are we keeping the 2 trailers, or are we getting rid of the 2 trailers to replace 2 trailers? Or are we just adding them to the fleet?
I thought it said replace.
Nope, nothing in there about trade-in, nothing in there about,
I didn't see that. I just saw replace.
so I guess a follow-up question, if we can get an answer, is what happens to the 2 that are there? And are they worth any money? I'm not gonna hold up the vote. Mary, I think Joe wants you.
Yes,
So,
Joe.
Madam Chair, generally speaking, there is either disposal of surplus property, if it's so declared, trade-ins, or repurposing. To these 2, I don't know directly, so I'll get that answer and report back to the board.
Okay, that'd be
Only other
great.
question is, we're buying more trailers, and we still have had the conversation multiple times, and I recognize we are working on it. How long are we gonna take trash from Provincetown to Yarmouth at the rates that we're taking them, and continue to focus on expansion when we probably, given the market, should start looking at taking care of the town of Harwich only? And this is a $205,000 purchase. I know we're not there yet.
Your
Doesn't
point,
seem smart to me.
your point is we might not need this if we weren't taking care of
Right.
other towns.
Right. And then lastly, $8,000 to deliver these from New Hampshire seems a bit excessive. I'm not sure what laws I'd be breaking driving up there and picking them up myself. I would throw it out there, I'd do it for half.
Shotgun.
That's just one trailer, you mean?
2 trailers.
For half.
Well, I can't do it, right?
Okay. Any other discussion
Well, we drive mattresses to Maine. I would think we could pick them up, I guess.
on
That's
your
my
way
real
back?
point.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Clearly getting late.
Opposed?
It's getting late.
5-0, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, D, Jeff.
I move to vote to authorize the chair to sign the Harwich Green Communities Grant Extension.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. E,
I move to discuss and possibly take a vote to execute a grant agreement between the town of Harwich and the Harwich Conservation Trust relative to the construction of the Cold Brook Ecological Restoration Project in the amount of $1.5 million.
do I have a second? Okay, discussion. Michael?
Madam Chair, sorry, but generally speaking, the board did not put a limitation on grant agreements that the administrator signs. However, this is a biggie, and I would not deign to take that on. That's why we're asking you folks to approve it.
Okay. But this is a grant request?
Grant agreement between
Grant
the
agreement,
town.
yep. Michael?
I guess the only question, two questions. One is who's going to take the project lead on this? Because I know there was some discussion about Dan Pelletier getting us to this point and then not being the town representative on this project, I guess is the best way to phrase it.
So go forward, the expectation is the Director of Natural Resources would be the primary point of contact, given what the project gets to in the long run.
Yeah. And then just second would be a comment. I'm glad we're finally here. It's going to be nice to see something done.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Town Administrators Report.
Given the hour, I'd like to yield. There are a number of different contracts and grants that were signed. I can go through them, otherwise I'd like to hold off until the 7th.
I think that would be wise. Selectmen's reports, Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On Saturday, I attended the 5th Annual Harwich Cape Verdean Festival, and it was terrific. And I don't want to say that everybody enjoyed themselves as much as I want to say it's educational for everybody who understands this. I applaud them showing up, but Cape Verdeans were integral to the not just the establishment of Harwich as a community, but there were times when we were really in trouble where they stepped in, going back all the way to the early 1800s. So I cordially invite you to the 6th one next year when they meet again.
Thank you, Don. Julie?
Just briefly wanted to say congratulations to Heinz Prof. What a wonderful event they had on Friday, and another valuable asset we've lost and difficult to replace, but obviously was very happy here. So that's it. Good luck, Heinz.
Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I have an awful lot to say. Hope you're all sitting
At least
down.
an hour?
No, I just want to say thank you to all who came to our office hour session at the library from 5:30 to 7:30 last Thursday. I think it was extremely beneficial and profitable for all.
Thank you. Michael?
You guys are probably sick of hearing from me, but Don, I tried my hardest to make that event. I couldn't make it, but hopefully next year. I'm in the summer business, so it's not easy to get out. Mary and I, several of us attended Heinz Prof's retirement party, and it was exceptional.
Yeah.
And he went out, he picked a date, he went out smiling. He had a lot of great things to say about the rest of the town employees. But it was a touching event, especially after all you really get to do is read from some of the naysayers about everybody leaving and hating the town of Harwich, and that was not the message at all. And that was nice to see, and it was nice to hear. And I wish some of the people that hid behind the keyboards had showed up to witness it.
It was a great event. The only thing I'll have, one of our visitors at the, at Jeff and my open hours, and I buried it in here, is the Cranberry Harvest Festival, and it was the new president and vice president, thank you, I've buried it, Fred Monday and Kathy Kirsch, and they talked about the festival and how much money they give back to the town, and just wanted to promote their events, the craft fairs, including the big one in September, as well as the music at the 204. So I encourage them to come here, because I think it's much more meaningful if it's coming from the podium as opposed to some of us sitting here that talk a lot. So hopefully they'll stop in, but I did tell them I'd throw it out there to watch out for those Cranberry Festival events. They're quite good. Can I have a motion to
I
adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Good night.